welcome back to another Grumpy Grognard gaming episode. This is one we've had planned for a while. We're going to explain exactly why, because it's not a question. It's not is or did. It's why. Why the Primaris ruined the Astartes. Obviously, thankfully, nothing at all has gone on this week other than that, so we can just get straight into that point. No, the fandom is once again on fire, and I think this is the worst I've ever seen it. It's just this is just exploded out of nowhere, and obviously what we're talking about here is the female Custodes, the Custodes. Yes, I was quite proud of that one, even if the video did upset some people because the gatekeeping basically didn't work. So I thought, we'll talk about that a little bit quickly because it's a very relevant thing, and then we'll get stuck into the Primaris because that's been a long time coming. But obviously, we've got Karl with us today.
Hello.
So Karl has been on the path of hating GW in the Primaris a lot longer than Matt and I have. Ever since 8th, wasn't it, Karl? You just turned around and said, no, bollocks.
Since the first leaked pictures of them.
I think it was progressing the storyline that did it for Karl initially.
Yeah, fundamentally, that's my biggest problem.
I think that's the point at which the lore really badly started to go wrong for GW. Like before then, there'd been a few bits and pieces, but that was the point. I was just like, okay, they really are trying to. Before we get stuck into the Primaris, let's talk about the female Custodes. So, gentlemen, just
the golden elephant in the room.
A golden elephant in the room with massive tits. So, as a rule, gentlemen, how do you feel about female Custodes being in the game? Notwithstanding the way that GW did it, but if they just changed a bit of law and said, right, cool, did something, and now there's female Custodes, how would you guys feel about that?
So, for me, Horus Heresy is a definite no in any way, shape, or form. No, simply because we've got established law. Let's stick to it. 40k at this point. It's. I mean, the whole game is basically on fire as far as I'm concerned. Just why not? Why not have them wear party hats while you're at it? Like,
yes, yeah. I've got to say, there's a certain amount of detachment that I've got from the 40k law now, where I am just sort of like.
Yep.
Okay, well, I don't really care, and I imagine you don't really care either, Matt. To be honest,
not really. No, I mean, fundamentally, I'm like, Custodes with boobies. I'm sure the law will be the same. It's just different models, isn't it?
But that's the thing; they didn't even do models, which is something we will get into in a second. They've been phenomenally lazy.
From a law perspective, I'm a bit kind of like, well, there's no female Custodes in Heresy whatsoever. Don't even get a mention. Although I think Aaron Dembski-Bowden was intentionally vague.
Yes, there's one line, isn't there, in one of the Siege of Terror books where he was just talking about golden armored men and women, which, as you say, intentionally vague. He asked to do it, they said no because there's no models.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a snippet of him saying that from a few years ago.
Yes, yeah, I saw the it was a social media thread of some description. I don't know. So
just to jump on that, the female Custodes thing in Horus Heresy is a definite no from me because everything we've got basically says that the sons taken from noble families. It's very specific on that. Golden armed men and women. Well, I'm not being funny, but the Emperor flies around in a giant golden battle barge, and the guys on board are probably going to be sporting the same colours.
Kind of his thing, isn't it?
I'm fairly sure the servitors cleaning the toilets are going to be wearing gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Gold overalls.
The thing I hate about it is the fact that they've said they've always been there. So they are in the heresy because they're saying, since the first, and I've done a video on that, but basically the first Custodes should have been Constantine Valdor. He's the template for all the rest. So saying from the first, at the very least, you're saying along with Constantine Valdor, who's the template, you've got women Custodes. That's the main problem I have with it. That and the extreme laziness behind the retcon. Quite honestly, Games Workshop should do better. Games Workshop is known for doing, or was known for doing, very deep, very good lore where they thought of all the different bits and pieces and made it work. Because let's be honest, the 40k universe is absolutely massive. Even before you add on the 10,000 years beforehand, the Horus Heresy and everything. So I just think there's a much better way they could have done it. I mean, you could have had some massive in-universe event that you did a campaign book out of and everything like that. Like all the Custodes had to go somewhere. There was a great big crisis and loads of them got fucking killed. And Guilliman basically turns around and goes, look, to refill the ranks, you're going to have to take women as well. That's it, done. That's it. That's all you've got to do. And then you've put something in the universe. You haven't fucked about with 30k. You still have some people that are like, oh no girls are Ricky. We don't want girls in our armies. But I think you'd have a lot less pissed off people than you have now.
I mean, to be fair, if you don't want girls in your armies, don't put girls in your armies.
Like I said, there's nothing stopping you from having a special order of Custodes. It just doesn't take girls.
No, I mean, if you want to do Sisters of Battle, you're going to have some issues. But like,
my army is nothing but missionaries and preachers.
And get Crusaders. Good luck.
I mean, I'm not like desperately upset about it either way, but my question would be, why do we need this change? We've got the Sisters of Silence. Is anyone advocating for male Sisters of Silence? I mean, do we need that? Is it relevant? Or could we just accept it is what it is and just enjoy it for what it is?
No, I'm absolutely with you. I don't think it needed messing with. And had they done anything, I think I would have rather seen them expand the Sisters of Silence role, because there is quite a lot you can do with that. And at the moment, it is only one kit. They don't even really have a character model. I think you've got that dual. Yeah, you've got that. Is that the one that's with Custodes in a dual box, or is she a resin one?
She's
no
a resin one. She's a resin heresy character.
Heresy, right? Okay, so there's nothing as far as 40k goes with the Sisters of Silence. I'm pretty sure it's just that one plastic box, and then there's a character dual. There's like one Custodian, one
but
one
then
Sister of Silence.
You've also got the entire Sisters of Battle army as well.
I mean, if we're talking about female representation, I genuinely don't think that 40k universe lacks for it, especially given, and I've said this before, the natural percentage of people, of men, that will be interested in something like Warhammer 40,000 or just Warhammer or wargaming in general is massively higher than the female. It's just nature. That's just going to be that way. Men are more belligerent, and we like to roll dice and blow things up. That's just there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way it is. That's why when you go to Warhammer World, it's like 200 blokes and 2 women.
I mean, I'm all for it with having female characters in the game. There's no reason why you can't. I mean, we've got female guardsmen, we've got female inquisitors. There's a number of female inquisitors,
and nobody's ever had a problem with it in the past. This is the other thing to mention. Like, people are like, oh, you're scared about having girls in your game. Necromunda literally has a gang where it's all females, and the males are weak, pathetic non-entities. Do you know what I mean? And nobody cares about that. Basically, space Amazons. Gang Amazons.
There's nothing wrong with having female characters in the game, and no one's. I've never thought anyone has had a particular problem with it. I think the problem is how Games Workshop handles these things, and it's one of the big things we'll get onto later with what I have with the Primaris.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the way they've handled it is very poor. And what's also poor on top of that is blocking anybody from the social media channels who dares challenge it. That's got a very kind of, you will agree with the party is right. On top of we've always been at war with Eurasia or East Asia or whatever it is, 1984 vibe, where they've just changed the past and you just have to accept it. The fact that they're out blocking people who are challenging it, I think is very...
Yeah, I mean,
I think as long as you're not being abusive, I think freedom of speech is paramount. So as long as you're not literally turning around to GW going, oh, you fucking bastards, what are you doing? But if you're just asking questions and challenging it, then I don't think you should be blocked from a social media channel. I don't think that's a good way for a company to act at all.
Yeah, I mean, Games Workshop have history of this, though. I mean, they've had a similar mentality. Do you remember when they did that tile they put out when they said the hobby is a big place and whatever happens, you will not be missed if you're...
Which a lot of people have been referring back to recently. I mean, because the thing is, GW did say back then, we will be diversifying our ranges, and we've seen a lot more female representation since then. And as you say, Karl, I don't think anybody has a problem with it.
Not at all.
It doesn't really matter, as long as it works within the law. So female Stormcasts work within the law. They've been there since the beginning. Well, not since the beginning.
See, the big difference there is the female Stormcast have been brought into a game where there's nothing saying that the Stormcast are all male.
Yes, yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. You've invented a new world. You've come up with these, and that's fine. If you've got a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you probably need help. But if it's a pre-established thing that specifically says it, and then you change it, the problem is every time they do this, it reduces your level of investment, because the things you care about could be changed on a whim.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is absolutely where I feel, where I'm like, even with the Horus Heresy now, I'm like, they could change anything and just say it's always been that way. I don't like that. Yeah. I think that's a very worrying thing, that this law that gets heavily invested in, which could literally be ripped apart at any point. I was really not happy when I found out they'd retconned Horus's death.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that because I've not read the books yet.
Well, no, he's still dead. It's just the manner of
Horus
the manner of
what
the
fuck?
death, basically, rather than the
heresy.
Emperor. completely psychically obliterating his soul so that he can never, ever, ever come back because the Emperor has destroyed him, his mind and his soul through the warp. Basically, the Emperor gets knocked out and anaphane gets put in his hand and he stabs him.
Yeah, it cheapens the moment.
Well, it cheapens the moment and it's done so they can bring Horus back if they need to.
Yeah, I mean,
the problem
the
I
one
have
saving
with
grace I have with that is, to be honest, if they're going to bring Horus back, they're going to do it in 40k, and
I suppose we don't care
everyone,
about 40k, but
you might as well model your new running around with clown shoes on at this point. Do what you want.
The problem I have with that is it makes me question Games Workshop's integrity.
Oh, 100%.
And that's the problem. Yep. It makes me think that basically, given sufficient stimulus or incentive, they will change anything. And I don't know if you've seen my Amazon video where I did a very, very bad impression of an American accent. But that's honestly the kind of thing that I envision. Amazon basically turning around going, look, there's not enough strong female characters that we can put into this TV show. We need more female representation. And that's why GW turned around and basically gone like, okay, put female Custodes in there. But the manner of the way that they've done it is so lazy. No new models, no upgrade sprue, just literally a little short story. There's no artwork with female Custodes in it. They didn't put them under cover. It just seems like they just tried to sneak it under the radar, but all of anally obsessive fans, and it's going to get picked up straight away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, see, I'm willing to think that this is the precursor to them knocking out a character, like a plastic character model.
But that's what I'm saying. They've literally just done that new shield captain, the kind of dumpy looking one.
Oh, the one who looks like he's part of the leagues of dwarves or Votan or whatever they are now.
Yeah, he looks like a Votan Custodes. Hey, if you can have female Custodes, why can't you have Votan Custodes? Equal opportunity for everybody. But yeah, I mean, seriously, at least maybe like an upgrade sprue, some female heads on it or something. They've literally done nothing. They've not done an article. They've not mentioned it. They've literally just done this short story. That's it. Like, if you took that short story out, obviously I don't have my hands on the codex, and I don't know if there's gendered terms in there. They took that short story out. Would you even know that they'd done female Custodes? And that seems to me, it just smacks of basically, we already had the codex ready to go. There were no female Custodes. Something has happened, Amazon, to make us do female Custodes. And like I said in my video, they just turned around and went, yeah, we'll just put a short story in there. And anybody says that it wasn't there, we'll just call them bigots, But
that's the core of the problem, right there. It's just that you're saying, oh, it's always been the case. Well, it hasn't, and if you don't agree with it, you're a bigot. Well, that's a cheap argument because no, I don't think you're a bigot if you question these things.
If you're turning around and saying, we hate women and gays and all that kind of stuff, then yeah, you're a bigot. But I mean, if you're just querying why GW have done this and why they've done it so handedly, I don't know. I don't think that's enough to get...
Yeah, it's terrible. Games Workshop are really, really bad at the moment at implementing new things. Well, like integrating things into the existing stuff. They've been really bad at it for quite some time. I mean, 2017, they were like, oh, there's this magic guy called Karl, and basically every not just the Primaris, but every time we need something new for the Imperial, we want to knock out a new kit. Karl did it.
Is Deus Ex Mechanicum, as I call him.
Pulls out. Yeah,
and then when people question it, it's it's always been the case. It's always been in the lore. It's in this new book we just released.
Well, that was the problem I was having when they were getting increasingly silly and doing things like the Centurions. We've always had these. It's like, you fucking haven't. Not only do they look like shit.
Someone at Games Workshop had just seen one of the Marvel movies and thought, oh, the Hulkbuster suit. Let's do that with Space Marines. And I saw it and thought, what is the point? What does this do that isn't filled by something else in the range better?
It's absolutely ridiculous. This is when you could really tell they were running out of ideas when you got that. I was like, this is the bottom of the barrel being scraped. Exactly where do these fit into chapter organization charts? Right. Okay. So that's the female Custodes. All of the opinion that although we're not necessarily against female Custodes being in the thing, we don't want it being retroactively retconned and affecting the Horus Heresy, which is effectively a historical game as far as Warhammer 40,000 goes, or Warhammer goes. Yes, a historical record. Yeah. It was bad enough when they turned around and said, oh yeah, Mark 6 was used throughout the Heresy. And it's like, fucking wasn't. It fucking wasn't.
Like, wait a minute.
Just because they wanted to put Mark 6 as their launch armor for the new plastic Horus Heresy range when they did it a couple of years ago. So yeah, the
previous Black Books outright state it was being prototyped before mass deployment, and then suddenly no, that's not the case. But yeah, sure, do what you want. Games Workshop. Games Workshop's going to Games Workshop.
This is it. This is what I've said at the end of the day. Not only is Games Workshop going to do Games Workshop stuff, but it only really goes one way from here. So you've got a lot of people like, yeah, I'm going to cancel my Warhammer subscription. I'm going to tell them how much money I'm not going to spend and how much models I'm not going to buy. There is no way in a million years that GW are going to turn around and go, oh no, all right, we made it up.
It's too little, too late.
Custodes. It's too late.
Please
It only goes one way from here.
Terrible.
And the way I think it goes is basically leading up towards female Space Marines.
Yeah, this is the precursor.
Yeah, I think this is the only way it goes. And the problem I have with that is I think that all of this is going to be a move towards making Warhammer 40,000 more palatable, and that is essentially anathema to the setting they have, because it's a very totalitarian fascist setting. That's not very appealing to lots of people.
No, it's not very appropriate to make it politically correct, because it's not. It's like the exact opposite, and that's kind of the crux of the whole setting.
Much as these people want inclusiveness and all this sort of thing in 40k, the Imperium are not good guys. They're not they're not protagonists. They're just the faction we are linked to.
The way I've always seen it with the Imperium, they are
identify with
the way they are because they have to be. So you're right, the Imperium is not good guys, but the reason the Imperium is like it is because of the nature of the galaxy. So
humanity's just gone down the darkest possible path. It's the absolute antithesis of Star Trek, really.
Oh, it is. Well, I don't know about new Star Trek.
Well, Star Trek hasn't existed since 2000. We'll go into that another time.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Not for this one, but yeah, no, you're right. It is the darkest possible path for humanity, and unfortunately, a lot of the things that they've done in the past, like have, for example, genes to the cults, the females was the breeders. All the men were warriors, and the females were the ones who just bred the next wave, because that's how a cult propagates, through having the different generations. But that kind of idea is not very conducive towards getting lots and lots of people, especially children, to play your game, and also in today's sensibilities. So this is why the effectively female Custodes would not make sense, because if the high nobles of Terra are all putting forward their sons, now they're putting forward their daughters as well, where's the next generation of Custodes?
You're thinking about this more than Games Workshop are.
I know, right? But then seriously, it's just a thing. So again, it's something that in the setting itself is unpalatable, so they've changed it. And I think they're going to do a lot more of that going forward. I think you're going to see a lot less xenophobia, a lot less purgings, all that kind of thing. I think a big test will be when the Imperial Agents Coast comes out.
Yeah, I mean, at what point? I mean, for me, the answer was 2017. But at what point is Warhammer 40,000 no longer Warhammer 40,000 for people?
Well, what point is it unrecognisable? I think from we've already I think of 10th. Well, I mean, are you talking about lore or game rules? Because obviously not much changed in the lore for 10th edition.
No, it was already a bit funky at that point.
Like Karl, I would say 8th. I would say the Primarch's coming back. If I'm being completely honest with you, that's almost the jump the shark moment kind of thing.
Yeah, the campaign books at the end of 7th, leading into 8th, which was Gathering Storm, which was basically, we're going to release Guilliman and these new Mega Marines. That was the asteroid hitting for me.
Yeah, because then suddenly, not only have you got Guilliman back, you've got all of the Super Space Marines in numbers untold that apparently have been sitting under Mars for asleep for 1,000 years. Let's get into the Primaris, because I haven't really read up on the Primaris very much.
Hold on. Before we do, there's just 3 things on this Custodes stuff that I kind of want to mention.
Okay.
One of them was I saw a cartoon strip and I actually commented on it, which leads me into my second point. And it's on Instagram, and I'll chuck you the link later on. And it's basically like a guy on a ship. I don't think he's the captain, but like he's in a bunch of panels and he strolls past a Custodes.
I've seen it.
And he stops and he goes, Duh! And he goes back and he's like, what the fuck is this? And he has a chat with like another male custode that's standing there, and it transpires that he's seen a female one, and he's like, these were never a thing. And the male guy goes, no, they've always been a thing, accept it. And he's like, they weren't a thing? And she goes, don't worry, brother, I got this. And he goes, all right. So wanders off, and she bends down and looks at this little human guy, and then suddenly like her eyes turn blue and she's got like a third eye that's appeared in her cheek, and she's like, no, we've always been here. And it's like, a ploy by Tzeentch, no less. And that proper made me laugh. And then some guy commented in that and basically said, like, no, like, it doesn't say anywhere that they're all dudes. And I was like, well, allow me to have a look. Because he was I've read, he goes, I've got both codexes. Yeah, he goes, I've got both codexes. It doesn't say anywhere. And I was like, well, unfortunately, mate, if you look at the 8th edition codex, right there on the contents page, it says the Brotherhood of Demigods in the biggest letters.
Well, I had people arguing that Brotherhood includes women, and I was like, what?
Yep.
I've never heard of a Brotherhood including women.
No, I was like, it's also mentioned on page 3, page 6, page 14 especially. Although, interestingly, in the 9th edition codex, brotherhoods and groups with like a male reference are way down. There's like two or three mentions in the 9th edition codex, and it's always for a specific fighting group of dudes. It's not for the Custodes as a whole. And so I think someone's been sneakily planning this for a little while. Because,
well, this is what I wanted to know with the 10th edition codex, because obviously nobody's got their hands on it yet, and I've tried to look at Guerrilla Miniature Gaming's video, and there's some shots of it on there. But I'm wondering if there's any gendered text in that codex at all.
Don't know. They probably might have avoided it and just gone like, yeah, can of worms. Someone else can deal with that, and just gone.
But obviously, we know they copy and paste lore, but I'm just wondering if they might have made that change. But even the 10th edition Custodes index cards had his in it. So. Well, yeah, I think it's been really lazily done. GW aren't doing themselves any favours, and I think rightly or wrongly, a lot of the fan base is pissed off. Like it'll do anything, but I think they've just handled it as badly as they possibly can. Sorry, Matt, you said you had more points.
Yeah, the only other point, like the third point, was I don't think the people that do the Warhammer socials don't really have a clue. And like you've established this in the past, like we've mentioned that. So for one of them to go, oh, they've always been there, it's kind of like you've just proven that you don't know what you're talking about. So you can't really take it seriously. It's like,
I've got a feeling, like especially with the blocking and everything, they may well have an activist. It may well be a GW-backed activist, but I've got a feeling there is an activist there of some description who's just like, you've put something in I don't agree with, blocked. And they're cackling themselves with an insane sense of ill-deserved power.
Yeah, the issue there is you've got these people that are running their social media, and to be fair, I'm willing to believe they're just guys and girls doing the job. They're just, But the thing is, it's the Parks and Rec meme, isn't it? It's I know more than you. When I used to get this a lot when I go into a Games Workshop. You know, you get the staff member, and again, I have no issue with them, but they come bouncing over to you, and they're like, "Hey, have you seen latest release?" And I'm like, I'm actively looking at the release schedule for stuff like months ahead before you probably know, and they'll be like, "Have you read the latest Horus Heresy novel?" And I'll be like deadpan with them. I'll be like, "I've read all of them." How far have you got? And they're like, oh, I haven't read it. And like, what? And it's the same with the community team. Like, you don't seem to understand what it is you're selling a lot of the time.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, especially it's
not just a job to you.
Yeah, with Warcom, I think they get told to write something and they just write it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you can't say that the social team knows more than anyone because they certainly don't when you ask them any questions about when stuff's coming out.
I mean, it's a slightly
different. It's adjacent, but the point's the same. It's like they only know what they've been told.
Well, that's it. The community team, they're going to be downstream from whatever the higher ups are telling them. It's not like they're in some secret club where they all get told.
No, it's like if the Warhammer managers don't know anything in the stores, and they don't.
The community team ain't going to either.
And the community team ain't going to know jack shit. So yeah, no, that's exactly it. I love it when you walk into a store and you've got somebody who has not even been alive for as long as you've been doing the hobby, trying to hype you up and sell you stuff. And it's like,
so
it's all crap. It's all crap now.
just on that note, because we're going to talk about the Primaris.
Honest.
I walked into a local store. Well, I say local. Everything's like 40 miles away from me. I walked into the local store and this guy walked over and he was trying to sell me a Primaris intercessor box. As I walked through the door, and I'm like, I'm not a fan of these whatsoever. And it was almost like I'd slapped him. Like he took personal offence. In fact, I did not like his toy soldiers. And I was like, no, I like the smaller toy soldiers, the actual Space Marines. And wow, yeah. Some of them really don't like it if you tell them you don't like the Primaris, you don't like latest thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of them just don't like it if you say you don't like anything to do with it. It's like some fans are so protective of stuff, and it's just at the end of the day, not everybody likes everything. It's okay not to like things.
Yeah,
you don't have to completely swallow the party line at all times. It's just not. It's not required. Well, it's not required to be a fan.
I've discussed this with Matt before. Like, people have. it's almost like their self-esteem is worked into the thing they enjoy. And if you don't agree with them, it's not that you're disagreeing with them. They take offence at it. It's almost like it's you're insulting them by not sharing their opinion.
It becomes part of people's identity, and if the last 5 years have proved anything, is that people's entire identity can easily hang on one little facet. And for some of those people, it quite possibly is Warhammer. And it's like that's all. There's nothing else interesting about them at all. Or if there is, it's all buried under the fact that they like Warhammer. So if you insult that one thing, you're basically destroying their entire ego and sense of being.
Well, you're attacking their self-worth.
Yes, exactly. That is, in particular, a very sad place to be.
That sounds like a them problem, not an us problem.
Well, absolutely. And, as I say, we're obviously old, grumpy bastards now, for the most part anyway, at least getting there.
I'm only a few years behind you two.
Yeah,
but you're extra grumpy.
These are all young. I mean, there's going to be people who are into Warhammer who've never known anything before Primaris.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be people who, 8th, 9th, 10th edition was their entry point. And what I will say to them is in 20 years' time, if this hobby's still about and you're going to be the old, jaded, grumpy guy, and when they introduce that the Emperor's come back with his mega Marines, you're going to see how this feels.
Yes, indeed. It just does seem to have got very, 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 very lazy since and very rich. It's like bad Hollywood writing. Like the general quality of writing has dropped in entertainment in general. There's a few things here and there that are quite good, but in general, writing is garbage these days, and it kind of feels like it has hacked its way into Warhammer, even into the novels, which I've not found have been as good as as previously. So we're going to talk about the Primaris because I think universally here, although Karl was first, none of us actually like Primaris or the concept of Primaris or how Primaris were done.
I like the aesthetic. I don't like the execution.
I like the aesthetic of the Mark 10 suit. That's it. Yeah. Everything else can get in the sea. So we'll talk about the Primaris. First of all, let's just talk about that. Let's talk about how stupid the models looked. After, because obviously we got the intercessors and we went to Warhammer Day, spoke to Jez at length about the intercessors.
We did,
and we were like, this is a chance to rescale and, more importantly, reproportion Space Marines, because they were very powerlifting squat before, weren't they? They were quite wide-legged.
Yeah.
And it made them look a lot less tall than they actually were. So I appreciate that he's had taken the chance to fix all that, and they are better proportioned. And I like the intercessor suit. I think as a Mark 10 suit, if you just rescaled the Space Marines and put them in that, I wouldn't have too many problems.
Yeah, Mark 10 plate's fine.
But then we got Inceptors and things like that, and I was not so much.
Oh no, the Reavers were the first disaster.
And the Reavers, they're bad.
The ones with
I saw a Photoshop of somebody
skinny tight jeans and
exactly. I was going to say exactly that. I saw a picture of somebody had taken the shin section, like the ankle to shin section, and painted it or photoshopped it flesh coloured, so they look like they're wearing 3/4 length shorts, and then they put holes in the feet, so it looks like they're wearing Crocs. And I will find that picture and I will put it in the video for our listeners, viewers. I've never ever been able to get it out of my head, and it's when you see that thing and it just ruins something forever. That's it, done. I already didn't like them, but they're there.
Kind of like how the aggressors look like Teletubbies.
That too, yeah. Although Matt has got a bit of a soft spot for the aggressors.
It's true. Just
confess.
I don't like any other gravies.
So on Jez Goodwin saying that they wanted to reproportion and rescale the Space Marines, and the Primaris is how they wanted to do it. I can understand wanting to reproportion and rescale them. They've done that with Heresy. Now the problem I have with the reason for Primaris existing there is they did exactly the same thing with the Plague Marines at the same time and offered no explanation. And it was completely fine. Yeah. They've upscaled the entire Chaos range.
I think that, in all honesty, I mean, obviously they wanted to make the models bigger. I think one of the reasons they want to make the models bigger is because you can then cram more detail onto them. Because obviously, I don't care what anybody says, back then, it might change now, but back then, plastic certainly did not have the fidelity that resin had, and therefore metal. No. So if you did put, and this is why a lot of the first edition Age of Sigmar stuff looks like bollocks, because you've scaled up the models, but you've not scaled up the fidelity of the detail. So all you've got is just bigger details.
Yeah, it's a weird one because there's more definition on the models, but they've also reduced a lot of the sort of Baroque architecture across the armor. They've made them very, very plain, very simple.
which was something that Jez said they did on purpose so that people could do more of the, because he said one of the things like people didn't like to paint Space Marines because it was too like flat surface all over and everything. So that's why they've got some of those raised portions on the Primaris. But he did say that had been done intentionally to make them less baroque, and also the one-piece bodies was done because before that, if you remember correctly, they were like ball and socket joints.
Yeah, I love them.
And he said the problem about that was that all that happened was the torso turned, so nothing else changed about the model, and it just didn't look right. So that's what he thought they were doing then, but all it did was make everything monopose essentially. But yeah, I mean, I think the intercessor suit itself was okay, and I didn't mind them being bigger. Obviously, would have just liked to seen the main range because they'd all been getting bigger. Like the Death Watch were a little bit bigger than the normal Space Marines because obviously they came out around about sort of 7, and then the Primaris were bigger than that. So they've been getting bigger for a while. I've got like 3rd edition and 4th edition Space Marines, and they're tiny in comparison now.
Yeah, so the Space Marine Heroes range are all like the Mark 7 power armored Heroes range are all larger than any tactical Marine.
Exactly. Yes.
I've got them all. They're all like clearly taller, and it's not just the pose.
Yes, not just the posing, no. So it shows it can be done, and they look right next to Primaris Marines, whereas normal Space Marines don't. Primaris was just quite clearly a space of they'd run out of ideas, because obviously before that we got the Centurion and bollocks like that, and they're like, right, we've run out of ideas. We need to get a way to get everybody to buy new Space Marines, and they did the Primaris, and it's now got to the stage where it's so massively oversaturated and bloated that me and Matt went through the Space Marine range, and I'm still editing that video at the moment, and just got rid of most of it.
Yeah, also
84 fucking units.
Yeah, and the whole thing on removing some of the Baroque stuff off the Space Marines to make it easier to paint. Well, I mean, I just before the stream, I was looking at the Stone Guard, like the Primaris Stone Guard on the website. I thought I'd just have a look through the range. Those things are coated in stuff.
Well, they've reversed that decision, because if you remember correctly, they also did the same with the Stormcast Eternals. So when those first Stormcast Eternals came out, they were very plain, very ugly Warcraft-looking aesthetic, which doesn't work within the Warhammer universe, in my opinion. Warcraft is Warcraft, Starcraft is Starcraft, Warhammer is Warhammer, and Warhammer 40k is 40k.
Was 40k.
Now, if you look, or was 40k, if you look at the new Stormcast Eternal models they've just shown off, Requesters or whatever the hell they're called, I don't know, I give up with the names. They're very detailed and actually look very nice, but they've clearly at some point had a change in design philosophy, which was very noticeable, I thought, when the Blade Guard Veterans came out.
Yeah, I mean, Age of Sigmar is not for me, but I will admit the range is definitely improving. They look better with every iteration.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think some of the Age of Sigmar stuff is absolutely being knocked out of the park at the moment, if I'm being completely honest. They had their dark period where everything looked like an action figure. I still don't like Nagash. I think he looks like an action figure, which is why I'm talking about that scale thing, where he's a huge model, but the detail isn't there. So he just looks like bits of him would move about, like he should, like an action figure.
Yeah, well, it was the Nagash kind of came out in that phase when they were like banging out Chaos Primarchs and all that sort of stuff. You get your
exactly,
big,
yeah,
giant.
It was almost like they didn't know how to make something that big. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, didn't know how to make it big in proportion to the rest of their armies.
Exactly, yeah. And now they do. Now they do know how to make these great big centerpiece models.
I mean, the thing with that Nagash is it doesn't really convey a sense of scale. Like if you look at that model in isolation, you couldn't tell how big it is really.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. There's nothing about it to give you that idea of scale. It's like when I watched Godzilla versus King Kong, and not versus the new one, the X Kong, and there's a scene where it's just apes fighting. They're in like the giant ape city. It's just apes fighting, and because there's nothing to give you any concept scale, you lose all concepts of scale, and it looks like they're all just 6 foot tall, whereas they're actually 200 foot tall. You can't tell because there's nothing.
There's no point of reference.
And no point of reference. And I guess Nagash is a bit like that. He's got some swirling books around him, but that's about it. There's nothing of normal scale to make that stand out. So thankfully they have moved away from that. And I did notice a very big change when we got to Cursed City. I thought Cursed City was a very obvious design ethos change. We're going to make everything a bit more old world now, a bit more like old Warhammer.
Yeah, I mean,
on purpose.
I think there's a very clear difference between Cursed City. I would lump in with the specialist games really. There's a very clear difference between how specialist games do things and how Sigmar and 40k are done.
Yes.
It's almost like whatever's left of Games Workshop is consciously aware there is a very big difference in those two fan bases.
Well, when I talked to Louise Sugden, who obviously did work at GW for quite a long time, she said basically all the old guard are specialist games now. Because I was telling her where I should go and work for Games Workshop, and she said, look, just get yourself, if you're an old school gamer, get yourself into specialist games, because that's where all of them are. And all of the core games basically got a completely different design brief to basically, sort of make it as easy and accessible and user friendly as possible. Where all the people who actually want to make good games are sitting in specialist games who have the love for old style GW. So I think we can definitely see that the design ethos has changed. Mostly, like obviously the new Terminators and Scouts that came out, great, which is what was really annoying because that just shows how well Tactical Marines could have been rescaled.
Absolutely, I'm a really big fan of the new Terminators. I really like them. They're the only Primaris-esque models that have come out, and I thought I need to get these. Mostly because I've got Space Hulk. They're too. Unfortunately, they're far too big to fit with any of the Heresy range.
They are, sadly, yes. They dwarf the Tartarus.
I've seen some really nice conversions, but the fact that they're like the Marine's head physically sits way over where a Mark 6 Marine or a Mark 3 Marine would be. Yeah, I mean, and I think those are fantastic kits, and they're basically examples of what Games Workshop could have done rather than the Primaris.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the Primaris just got so silly. I think it's like when we got the Suppressors, which has still never ever received an individual piece. That's how bad they are. You've got models going around with jump packs that are carrying autocannons, and like the recoil alone is going to be pushing that guy backwards. There should be a rule that every time you fire them, you lose 2 inches off the range because they just keep moving backwards or something, and the models just started getting really, really silly like that, I thought. And it was like when they brought out, because they were just inventing new units. So it's the Justicar.
Which was Justicar? I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's the one that's got the hourglass. That is like he's got the flat sword, so there's no point on the sword.
Oh, is that the knockoff chaplain?
Yeah, basically, yeah. He came out with Indomitus, and it's like we've just made him up.
Yeah, the
and
AOS
nobody takes him, and it's just like, we need to invent something new to cram into this.
It's because he looks like a Necron, but like in disguise with a balaclava.
I mean, he just looks like an Age of Sigmar one. He just looks like an Age of Sigmar one. I don't think he's even got a gun, so he just goes straight in.
From a gaming perspective, what is the purpose of him? What does he do that is missing from the Primaris range?
I think he's just another level chaplain, isn't he? I think he's just like obviously chaplains are meant to look after the morale and the what's the word I'm after? Spiritual. Thank you very much. Spiritual helps. Obviously, it's not just a car, is it? It's something else, isn't it?
Isn't he like a trainee chaplain?
The whole Primaris range is famous for having wonderful names for its models like Hellblasters and Reavers. And
let's talk about that for a second, because what is hell?
Yeah, it's a very Christian concept. I don't think they really have that.
I've never heard anybody in 40,000 refer to hell.
No,
like if you die and you're good, you go to the Emperor's side. If you die and you're bad, I don't know what happens. They haven't really talked about it.
Yeah, the closest you've got is like several
you get phrases like warp take you.
That are just that are HEL, but it's not a double L.
Or Hellbrute.
Like the Helldrake.
Yeah, or Hellbrute, yeah. It's almost like a Doom kind of thing. If Doom's got that concept of hell and they're like nicking that. Yeah, it's not just a car, it's Judicia.
Judicia.
Shows how much it's fucking stuck in the memory. Right.
Yeah, Justicars are great knights.
Justicars are great knights, you're right. Okay, so this is how much of a cramming and a shoving Judicias were in 40k. Even the wiki entry on the Warhammer 40,000 wiki has got like 50 words. So I'm going to read all of it. Judicia is a Primaris Space Marine who is in training to become a Primaris chaplain. Sworn to silence after accepting their role, Judicias do not preach aloud, but instead use their deeds to preach a litany of righteous fury. Wielding an arcane hourglass-shaped device known as a Temper Mortis in one hand, can be used to slow the progression of time in a limited area. It's fucking retarded. Around an enemy unit to easier kill those foes. And an immense execution of relic blade in the other. Judicias must prove their worth in battle to join their chaplains, so that their chapter's chaplaincy proper, doing so through acts of devotion and slaying of the enemies. That's it. That is all it is written about.
So he's a chaplain in training with a time machine. But
exactly.
Who does the opposite of what a chaplain actually does?
Just speak to people and rouse them to greater feats.
So the chaplain himself doesn't get the time machine, but the training chaplain does.
The noob.
Right. So how many applications would that time machine have throughout the whole of the Imperium, rather than give it to one guy who's not quite good enough to be a chaplain yet?
I have no idea. It's a MacGuffin, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It's something that's been put into the game that just sounds ridiculous. Like it's not been thought through at all.
And it's never been utilised in any other way. And this was just, we need a cool character model, invent this one and put it in there. And yeah, it's just lazy.
I mean, off the top of my head, you could have had it so, I don't know, it emanates an aura of fear or something that makes people second guess when he's near them. So
yeah, which would be cool. Yeah, exactly.
And doesn't have any weird temporal mechanics that inexplicably don't work with anything else in 40k. Like
again, I don't think this guy even got a separate release.
This is the Primaris in a nutshell, though. Things just get released. We'll figure it out later.
This is one of the ways in which the Primaris ruined the Astartes, because obviously what they did with Age of Sigmar is they did this thing where basically there's chambers of the Stormcast Eternals. So every time they need to do a new Stormcast Eternal release, they just open another chamber. And they even made a little joke out of it when they did one of their previews, because they had somebody turn around to Sigmar and go, "Oh, you can't just open a chamber to solve all your problems." And Sigmar went, "To hell I can't," and just opens another chamber.
That's where you're wrong. Like the dude with no legs.
Where you come to this problem where you've got so many models and so much of a blow that GW are getting rid of models that are only 4 years old.
So how many Space Marines are in a chapter?
You can't use these anymore.
Because
this is exactly it.
So
we're going to get onto that in a second. So I think we've decided that from a model design aesthetic, Primaris made Space Marines. I mean, look at the Desolators.
T-shirt cannons for all.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the Primaris have made Space Marines look pretty fucking stupid. They're not grimdark. They look like silly action figures doing whatever they need to do. It's just a horrible design aesthetic that just moved away from the classic. I think that there's too much variation. Like, you've got these bloody Eliminators and Infiltrators, and to this day I can't tell you what the difference between them is, model wise, or they ran out eventually.
Too many units
as well.
You know, and again, and all of these when they come out are like monopose models, and there's not much customization you can do. It's just buy more squads. So rather than the old days where you'd have like a Devastator, you'd mix and match them to whatever your tactics would be. Now it's like, we've got one for multi-melters, we've got one for missile launchers, we've got one for flamers, and we've got one for plasma. Well, it's a massive model range.
And each of these units has its own entry in a codex rather than being an option for a unit.
Exactly, yeah. There's 84 fucking units in the Space Marine army. I wouldn't want to balance that.
So they've somehow managed to make a game incredibly simple, but then completely overly complicated with options.
Well, that's exactly it. And we were talking, when me and Matt were talking about what we do to fix 40k, the first thing we do is take the special rules away from every unit, because that's 84 special rules that you've got to try and balance, and
for the most
just a cursory look at some of these Primaris Marines. I mean, a lot of these could just be an entry in the codex, and most of these units look like could just be weapon options.
Well, that's another thing they did, didn't they? They split up all the weapon options for the characters and the armor options, because each of them applies to a model now, a model that you can buy. They've got each model has got its own, which is ridiculous, because you could probably lose about 15% of them if you just had the character, and then in the old days you'd have power armor, Terminator armor. You know?
Yeah. Scout armor.
But then that would involve giving war gear points costs, and obviously we got rid of that because it's too complicated for poor Timmy. So as I said, I think we can agree that visually, Primaris definitely ruined the Astartes silhouette and the classical look. You know, before everybody was in power armor or they were in Terminator armor.
It was
like
Scout
5
side,
different fucking types of armor. You've got Gravis armor, you've got Obos armor, you've got Intercessor armor, you've got whatever the
they just lack a defined look.
Yes, they lost identity. I think that's the word I'm looking for. They lost identity.
And the problem is that I would argue the best of the armor is the standard armor the Intercessors wear. And when you look at what that really is, it's Mark III iron armored legs. It's a Mark VII modified chest piece, but arguably Mark VIII. It's a Mark IV helmet.
It's got the gorget, so it's more like the errant armor.
Yeah, Mark IV helmet. I mean, and Mark III arms. I mean, it's well between Mark III and Mark VII. If you look at the assault intercessors,
it's like a greatest hit hodgepodge, isn't it?
Master of the Forge. I'll have your finest armor hash, please.
Exactly. It's like we don't mind the intercessor. If they brought out that as a Mark X armor, upscaled the Space Marines, and said, "Look, here's your new Space Marines," I'd be like, "Yeah, that's fine."
Yeah. That'd have been great.
That's fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. None of your stupid Invicta battle suits. Just make the classic old box dreadnoughts bigger. Don't give them a fucking beer belly. There's no need for that. And just fucking scale everything up. Be absolutely fine with that. We'd have no hover tanks. We'd have no fucking fat dreadnoughts. I'd be like, yes, this is all perfectly fine. Thank you. I will buy a new army. Thank you very much. And I don't know about you guys, but it would not have stopped me from buying a new army. I would have been like, yeah, that's fine. You've made them bigger, they look better. I will have a new arm. That's fine.
If they'd have just upscaled and added more definition to the standard Marine kits, I would have bought them immediately. I would have been on board.
I think most people would.
I think the best precedent for this was when 3rd edition came out, and it was the edition where you got the Black Templars.
Black Templars versus Dark Eldar.
And you got the tactical squad and the land speeder, and it was the first set to have the ballpoint, the ball joints. And I took one look at that, and like the bolters were different, the power armor looked different. There was more definition. I looked at that, and that was incredible. I was hooked immediately. I was like, they've taken everything I liked, and they haven't reinvented the wheel. They've just added more detail to it and found a new way to make it posable. Great. With the Primaris, what they did was they elongated everything, made it all monopose, and then told me that they're better than anything I already own.
Super duper bestest ever Space Marines. And yeah, we're going to get onto that in a second. We will talk about the war very, very soon, because obviously that is fucking stupid. So, as I said...
Just while we're talking on the upscale thing, sorry, I just wanted to cover this. I clipped this from Games Workshop's Warhammer community page from when the Primaris were coming out. It was like they were doing like a rundown on them. And this is probably one of my biggest grievances with them, is... are all my current Space Marine miniatures redundant now? No way. The Primaris Marines do not replace regular, if superhuman killing machine can be called or described as regular, Space Marines. These guys have a few extra genetic enhancements thanks to Belisarius' call, and serve as additional reinforcements to the Adeptus Astartes arsenal, not replacements. Oh, really?
I think we...
If you walk into a Games Workshop now, outside of the Heresy range, if you walk over to the Space Marines, there is not a single Space Marine on the shelf anymore that isn't Primaris. And I've been into multiple stores and looked.
I don't think there has been, apart from Horus Heresy, a single photograph of a Warhammer model that's not a Space Marine that's not been Primaris in the last 3-4 years, at least. To the point that when the Sternguard came out, the Sternguard with the Mark 7 helmet, that was the first time we'd seen a Mark 7 helmet in forever.
Yeah, sad that.
You know, a nice reminder of what could have been. Because again, those Sternguard, they're just upscale Space Marines. Obviously, they've got the intercessor suits, but they're still just upscale Space Marines. Like when we've got the Scouts, upscale Scouts, it's fine. You should have given us that fucking 7 years ago, you bastards.
I will say, if you're one of these people that really, really loves Primaris, and bear in mind we're grumpy old men at this point, and they've changed our toys. I'm not here to say you can't enjoy what you enjoy, but this is just how we feel about it.
Absolutely. There's some people that for some reason, some godforsaken reason, enjoy Star Trek Discovery. I don't understand how, but they do. That's fair enough. It's up to you. Sure as fuck not for me. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like Primaris, I kind of feel like it's just a kiddie thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just like maybe they felt normal Space Marines weren't cool enough for kiddies. I don't know, because the whole idea, like the whole Primaris aesthetic, especially with the tanks, was basically if there's a flat surface, slap a gun on it or weapons underscore.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
You know,
I mean that repulsor tank thing. It's just like that. I don't think you can move an inch anywhere on the model where they haven't slapped an ammo crate or a gun or something.
Got absolutely ridiculous. So, and those grav tanks in general, I just hate them anyway. None more than the pickup truck.
The Impulse.
Oh, the cheap floaty rhino.
Yeah, the cheap open top floaty rhino. No. Just no. Right, we'll move off of the aesthetic because I think we just agreed that for the most part, apart from the intercessor suit, which was quite a nice sort of upgrade thing, the Primaris, like there's a few here and there. I don't mind the blade guard, for example. I think they look quite nice. There's a couple here and there, but for the most part, especially different armor types, fuck off. Ironically enough, there's
elements of them that are pretty good, but I mean, just overall, I'm not a fan of them. I just don't see the point.
Exactly. Yeah, it just became it was all specialised, and it was just a case of I had a meme where it was Gulliman basically saying like, I've abandoned the Codex Astartes because Belisarius' call assures me that these will lead to increased sales potential or something by having different units for everything. And I can't find the meme now, unfortunately. I've been looking for it. But that made me think of it. It's just like, that's literally the reason why GW have done it, just to be able to sell more different kits. Because in the old days, what could you do? You had Tactical Squad, you had Devastator Squad, Assault Squad, Veteran Squads, Scouts, Terminators. That was your lot, and then some characters. So unless you were to buy a full chapter's worth of Space Marines, sorry, a full company's worth of Space Marines, they were very limited in what they could sell you, unless you were doing one of the divergent chapters, in which case they'd sell you slightly more diverse things. But now it's nearly 100 different units for the Space Marine army. It's just ridiculous, and I fully expect it to get chopped down. I mean, I think a lot of the weird thing is they do get rid of a lot of the firstborn units, as they're called. It's going to be really awkward because then you've got Terminators and Scouts still sitting. So okay, we'll see what happens. I've got a feeling we may well see things like the suppressors fuck off. They won't be missed, but certainly that range is a bit silly and a bit over the top and massive for no good reason. So the next thing was something that you did actually touch on very quickly, Karl, that I wanted to get onto, and that was another way that the Primaris have ruined the Astartes, and that is the chapter organization. Because who fucking knows now? You know, I mean, I was reading the wiki because, as I said, I did a bit of research, and it still said that broadly there are still 1,000 Marines, 10 companies, 100 Marines per company, but now they just seem to switch armor dependent on what they needed. So I always had the feeling that a suit of armor was personal to a Space Marine. Yeah.
Well, it used to be.
I think the only difference is veterans. Some of them had a choice between Terminator plate or power armor. Like in
right. Okay. Company. Yeah. But I mean, like, for example, I was trying to work out where the fuck Reavers came into it, and apparently they're part of the Scout company. Scouts don't use Reaver armor. Normal Space Marines use Reaver.
Aren't they fully inducted Space Marines because they're bigger than the Scouts?
You would think so, because obviously there are no Scout. There's no Primaris Scout, surely.
But yet we have Primaris Scout models now.
It's
it's so inconsistent. So are we saying the Infernus Marines they're the flamer toting chaps? Are they the same as Hellblasters now? Are they the same guys just holding a different gun?
And a different backpack, presumably, because obviously the ammo feed and everything.
Yeah, I mean, are they supposed to be the same Space Marine, but just loaded out differently?
So. And there's no mixed squads anymore. Now you just have one weapon.
Cool. Is that made clear in the Codex or anything?
Not really.
One of the big things about the Codex is the Codex should help shape and define how you feel about the army. So if you look at, was it the 7th edition codexes? Where one of them had an actual breakdown of how many Space Marines were in every single company of the Blood Angels. And another one had the Ultramarine 2nd Company listed and told you even the nicknames of each squad in second company.
I don't know which one it was, because remember a couple of editions got 2 Space Marine codexes. I think
gotta make that money.
I've got the one. I think I've got the codex you're talking about. Back when codexes were actually really good. Yeah, the chapter organization is so nebulous now.
It is whatever they need it to be, and this is the thing that makes you lose investment because you don't have any
like the law.
Yeah, it's how do you get invested in this? You've got no definable rules for it. You just collect. Then nominally there's 1,000 Space Marines, and arguably they sell more Space Marines than there are in the chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. I mean, because as you say, a lot of them are the same Space Marine, technically in a different suit of armor. So in the old days, you'd be like, okay, here's my Devastator squads, here's my tactical squads, here's my assault squads, and generally they're from each individual companies. So say you've got 2nd Company Space Marines, you've got yellow. It used to be yellow back in the day. It's gold now. Yellow shoulder pad rims. You've got 6 squads of tactical Marines, 2 squads of Devastators, 2 squads of assault Marines. That was it. The tactical Marines didn't sometimes put on the assault squads. You had assault squads. You had characters that could use this different war gear, but they were set. Each tactical Marine had his own suit of armor that was very personal to him, that would be cleaned by like a chapter serf or something like that. They have their own armorer, and they might engrave that suit. They might do all sorts of things to it, and it was their suit. Still uniform because they're following the codex, but they would do things. Now it just seems like a Space Marine just puts on whatever suit is required for the mission sort of thing, and there's no
it's whatever
personal connection with it. Because they used to sometimes a hero's suit would be passed down to the next Space Marine, for example.
Yeah, so the Ultramarines novels have Uriel Ventris picking out a new suit of armor when his was 2 damage, and it was like what a relic suit. And the armourer gave the history of where this suit came from, who previously wore it, and that sort of thing. Whereas now it's whatever Belisarius Tony Stark Karl has created his latest Iron Man suit.
Like that, yeah.
They just put that on. It's not a venerable relic. It's just some stuff that's been slapped together.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's lost the specialness, and that was a massive part of the 40k lore. The fact that all this technology was forgotten tech, and they had to worship the fuck out of everything because they basically couldn't make it anymore. Like, some things can be made, but a lot of it couldn't.
Yeah, Space Marines used to be warrior monks, and now they're special forces guys. And
exactly.
These were basically medieval knights in like their sci-fi-ish armor. And,
exactly.
And now they're just
fortress monasteries and stuff like that. Yeah, and they do penance and they'd pray and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Blade Guard maybe, but most of it just doesn't have that feel to it. Like they don't feel like warrior monks. They're just generic sci-fi troopers.
Like flavor and the identity has been stripped out of them.
Yeah,
as you say, like why really bother having scouts if you've got reavers, which are more experienced Space Marines who've got all the implants, who can do the same job, i.e. infiltrating and shit.
Or why waste a full Space Marine being a scout reaver when you could just leave it to scouts to do that?
Yeah. Why have scouts with sniper rifles when you've got eliminator squads?
Well, they haven't.
Well, no, but I mean, you can still have sniper rifles in scout squads, can't you? So.
Well, yeah, but they took most of the fuckers out.
So yeah, again, I think that's another element that we could say, like the chapter organization and the identity of a Space Marine chapter and certainly company has been completely eroded by Primaris.
Yeah, so just to build on that, the part of the problem I have there is the history is basically now missing. So when you've got things like the Imperial Armor books where you can play the Badab War campaign, you can't do that now. You can't play a game that was set from between the Scouring, like 10,000 years of history, because they weren't there for that. You could only play what is currently going on.
Yeah, they're all apparently asleep.
Yeah, I've had campaigns where we played the Age of Apostasy, and we played the Nova Terram incident, the Badab War, all these sorts of campaigns and these things, which you can now no longer do. You cannot access the entire breadth of the Imperium. You have now is what they've got, which is 40k.
It's like if you want to play anything pre the fall of Cadia.
Yeah. So if Guilliman wasn't there, you can't have your Primaris Marine army be there.
Basically, yeah, pretty much. Which, as you say, I mean, it both limits the game massively, and it robs you of what have been some of the best written and well thought out conflicts going.
Yeah. I mean, basically, and I think the big difference between the Horus Heresy and I will get to Primaris on this, but the big difference between Horus Heresy and 40k is the tone the games are kind of set in. So the Horus Heresy takes itself very, very seriously. Like it's almost historical. It's like it's a game where there's not a lot.
It's telling past events.
Yeah, but there's no lol so random elements, kind of like your zany nurgling characters and your
fuck. Oh, you're right. It's very serious.
Yeah, you don't have your Skitari guy on stilts, or just the elements of 40k people think are really, really like lol so random is the best way I've got of explaining it. The Heresy takes itself a lot more seriously. So the model range kind of reflects that. When you look at the things like Hellblasters, there's nothing in Heresy that's going to be called Hellblaster or anything like it.
Well, I so massively prefer the aesthetic of the Horus Heresy to anything in 40k at the moment, I think.
Oh, easily, without doubt.
Especially in Space Marines.
As much as we're ragging on Games Workshop, I will say Horus Heresy is fantastic. It is one of my favourite games.
The new Solar Auxilia stuff that came out, models-wise, just absolutely fantastic.
I mean,
the rules. This is a good game, because it's based on 7th. They just took out formations and made a few changes.
Well, they had the best version of formations.
7th wasn't that bad a version of 40k. It's just they brought in formations, which was basically pay to win. Because the formations came in, it's like, if you take exactly what's in this formation, we'll give you some ridiculously overpowered rules, and you'll probably win the game.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of rules, I would say I actually prefer Horus Heresy 1 to the current iteration, but it's still a good game.
It's got some problems, which annoyingly still haven't been fixed, especially around tanks. But yeah, it's
I
it's
mean,
a very different game. I've not played, because I watched Winter's SEO battle reports, and even just watching somebody play it, you can see that Horus Heresy is a much better game than 40k, just massively.
Yeah, there's more to it.
It just looks more fun. It looks like you've got more tactical choices. There's an ebb and a flow to the battle that's not there for 40k as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's also an element of suspense with it. So when you're playing Horus Heresy, you're playing in this pivotal moment for mankind, and you're deciding, you're helping to decide and shape what had happened. With 40k, it tends to be whatever you're doing doesn't really matter, because they're going to move the timeline on to whatever model range they want to sell next.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just too disparate. I mean, I try not to get too hung up on the whole geography of the 40k universe, but anybody can fight anybody. It doesn't really matter where they are. Like, they've put this big rift in the universe, but that doesn't really seem to make any bloody difference either. And it's just also nebulous. With 30k being almost, as you said, a historical game, there's actual key elements and events that you can play out.
Yeah, it's
even if you don't have a specific bespoke mission for it, you can just say, right, we'll play this mission, but we're using these two forces and we're doing this, because the law's there and it's been written, and you've got all these historical battles and everything. With the Primaris, it's just in 40k, what the fuck's even going on? They were doing the oh god, what's it called? The what's the Nachman Gauntlet?
The last thing I knew was that Arcs of Omen stuff.
Arcs of yeah, that's right. Where the lion came back.
Yeah, and but the thing is, it doesn't, with the stakes of it, 40k just doesn't seem to matter anymore. Like, it doesn't matter what you do.
Well, you've got no real idea of what's going on either. This is the thing, like, because the Great Rift happened, and then Bobby G comes back and he brings his Primaris Space Marine. It's like, okay, well, I've got all of these new reinforcements, but apparently, like, Ban has never been closer to falling, so they're needed as reinforcements. But then there's some really weird time skip, and they had to do some retconning because apparently Plague War book didn't match up time-wise, so they had to change it.
I'm surprised they bothered.
It's also, I think nebulous is just the way to describe it. In the Horus Heresy, you can probably describe more or less what's going on at any point, because people don't realise the Horus Heresy did not last that long.
7 years.
Exactly. It's a very short event in the grand scheme of things. In 40k, what's going on with even with the Tyranids, like the new lore line that they're doing, the new narrative is Leviathan is apparently heading towards Terror or something, but nobody seems particularly bothered or to care. Codexes don't seem to be doing anything. There's no campaign books to speak of or anything like that. It just seems to be just a place where it's just like, look, here's a generic universe with something going on, throw your models on the table and try and get 100 points.
Yeah, so I mean, so the Ultramarines were having a really tough time with Necrons in 9th edition, and suddenly the Necrons just gone away. The Tyranids now, they're big deal. Like,
it's like the Silent King. It's like the Silent King's come back. He's the big bad, and as far as I was aware, he did the square root of nothing.
No, he released a model they could sell.
Yeah, exactly. Quite a nice model, to be fair. I quite like the Silent King.
So,
yeah, as you say, nothing seems to have any impact. Nothing seems to last.
No, I mean, go back to 7th, just before they started moving the clock, and this is what I really liked about 40k at that point, was it was a setting. It wasn't a time period. Like, you are at the clock is at 2 minutes to midnight for humanity,
and had been at 2 minutes to midnight for a long time.
Yeah, this is the end of days. Like, everything is horrendous. Your guys are fighting the battle to either wipe humanity out or hold on to it. And it might not be a battle you can win, but it's desperate. The stakes are there. It's really important. And now Guilliman's come back, so what you do doesn't matter. Because Guilliman's going to. It doesn't matter how climactic the battle, how important everything is. The timeline will move on to the next big thing, and it will be an excuse to sell more models.
Yes, and as you say, Belisarius Call will invent those models for you.
Yeah, so you just kind of lose stakes. Like, you lose your moment that you're enjoying. I mean, at least that's what it feels like to me. I'm sure that's not the case.
No, I think I do agree. I think the narrative focus of 40k has been massively diminished in the last 2-3 editions. I just don't. As you say, nothing seems to matter. Nobody. It was like another thing I wanted to talk about real quickly, and this is more of a lore thing. I think we're segueing into that anyway. Was the fucking Rubicon Primaris?
Oh, I'll get a jail free card where we can upscale the models that we want to keep while binning off your army.
Yeah, exactly. At first, they were like, "Oh, this is really dangerous." It's like Minus Cargo. It was a miracle he died, and then he came back. It was like a miracle he survived. It'd be very, very difficult to get anybody else to go through it. Now, apparently, it's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean,
now
if
it's like absolutely risk-free. Apparently,
if you wanted to introduce stakes to it, have a famous character die.
yes, I think that desperately needs to happen.
Have someone not
the
make
last
it.
character I remember dying was Tycho.
Yeah, and this was well before that. He died at Armageddon.
Yes. I mean, Eldrad Ulfran died, and they fucking brought him back. I don't even remember, but he died in the. What was
he
the
died
one
on the
they
Blackstone
did with...
Fortress.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was going to say it's when Abaddon did the Gothic War.
Yeah,
I can't remember what the
Battlefleet
name of the
Gothic.
bloody campaign was.
The 12th Black Crusade.
And they killed off Eldrad Ulfran, and apparently he's back. Okay. But yes, I do generally think that they need to. I mean, I thought Minus Cargo was going to get killed off. I really did. I don't see the point in him really being around if the Primarch's back. But
he's kind of standing around twiddling his giant thumbs now, really, isn't he? He's not
giant thumbs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's just pounding his fist together all day.
Sorry, no, you mentioned Tycho. I will give them props for was it the 2011 Codex, the Blood Angels one, when they gave him a Death Company profile as well.
Yeah.
So you could have Tycho, and then what was affectionately called Psycho Tycho.
Tycho, yeah. No, it's good, and that was just an example, like a small example of them advancing the lore. Like, this guy has died. He went Death Company, and it wouldn't surprise me. Like when
I mean, the
fucking
Codex mentioned
they get around to doing the Blood Angels, Osiris Call just fixes the fucking first or whatever, or the Black Curse. Is it Black Curse?
No, the Black Rage.
Black Rage, that's it. Black Rage. Wouldn't surprise you, just fucking fixes it because he's that kind of
when the Primaris first came out, they said that the new Blood Angels, the new Primaris ones, are showing no signs of the Black Rage. And then within like a year, they were like, "Oh, we haven't released models, but just paint them black."
Ridiculous.
And now you can buy a Death Company. I looked at this earlier. You can buy Death Company Intercessors. But what are the Death Company Intercessors? They're Intercessors with the normal Blood Angel upgrades. There's nothing Death Company about them.
Yeah, that's another thing I went obviously because most of the Divergent chapters have not had Primaris models that are chapter specific. So I think the Space Wolves got that utterly pathetic Hound of Mordkai box.
That's an upgrade sprue again.
Just an upgrade sprue. Blood Angels, as you say, have got that upgrade sprue for the Death, but there's been no Sanguinary Guard or anything like that. So again, anything that
they are bringing them out. I mean, you've got the Black Templars.
I mean, the Black Templars did well, and the characters have been upgraded. I imagine that when the Blood Angels come out, we will see a new Sanguinor Astaroth model, because they've done Mephiston and Dante now. It does seem that if you use Primaris, you will struggle to put identity into your army.
I mean, you think that this would be their opportunity to bring out some genuinely interesting lore and really work at it and show that these guys are developing their own thing, but they're not. I mean, the closest we got, I really think, is the new Dark Angels, that the Fallen that have been.
Oh, the Inner Circle, was it? Was it Inner Circle?
Matt, you're better placed to talk about this. What are the new Fallen that are somehow now Primaris? What's that all about?
I don't fucking know.
They're the new
all the new stuff. I pay no attention to any of it.
You should know. You're the dress wearing Dark Angel player.
I can't remember the name of the unit. They're
the Dark Angels are dress wearing, not Matt. I don't think.
Well, the new Dark Angel models.
I'm aware.
And they're supposed to be really, really secretive, and no one knows.
Yeah, I think they're called Inner Companions, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think the internet was calling them the Risen.
Okay.
Because
apparently, what happened was the Lion came back and then just basically forgave all the Fallen.
And then made them Primaris, I'm assuming, because they're all in Primaris armor.
No, fuck. I haven't read it, mate. As I say, I don't read. If I read lore now, I go back and read old 8 codexes. And that's the most recent I will read. I prefer to go earlier than that. But obviously, things like Sisters of Battle and stuff like that didn't exist. So, because that was what I was reading most recently.
When the 8th edition rulebook came out, I remember I bought it. I went to a coffee shop. I sat down. I read it for 20 minutes. And I'd never picked it up again. I've put it on the shelf, and I was like, nope, not for me. This is awful. Like, the lore is awful.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was. You're not wrong. I mean, I didn't even think the Gathering Storm was particularly good. I'm being honest. It was very much like the Fall of Cadia was okay. I didn't mind that bit of it, but like the whole
it was prep
teleporting to Ultramar, and then like that's one of the main things I think that shows up the weakness of writing, and it is something that I see in things like Star Trek a lot these days, and it's risen its head in Game of Thrones as well. Is this no understanding of time or distance and teleporting to wherever you need to be to make something happen,
or just generally that, and not establishing the rules of the world.
Yes, yeah, and not having coherent rules, and it's just lazy. I don't feel like anybody who's really writing 40k lore these days cares about it, if you know what I mean. It's like Matt said, he used the Tau as a reference. Matt, I don't know if you want to chime in here. We're talking about the Tau and everything being designed to be able to fit into a
like back in
Anta?
the day when Andy Chambers was still around, because he actually gave a shit about everything that he did.
And if there's one thing I could have done, I would have basically tied Andy Chambers to a chair. Sorry, Andy. He's actually my friend on Facebook, and I would have made him never leave 40k.
Yeah, I don't think he'd have liked that much.
I would have fed him. It would have been fine.
You've already got one emperor on a golden throne. You don't need another one in the actual office. You don't need corpses on chairs. So I'm very.
Can make the chair gold if I need to.
Earn your beans. Write a new Battlefleet Gothic.
I mean, for me, that was the glory days of 40k. It really was. I think, back then when he was over fiend, if you will, off 40k, I think that was what was really good. But yeah, sorry, you were saying with the Tau, there's some real thought.
Yeah, like right up to 6th edition, like even including like the Riptide didn't break it. And basically, like everything that Tau deployed was either a skimmer, a flyer, or had a jetpack. So it was all really tidily done. Like broadsides could fit into an Orca, they could fit into a Manta dropship, and get to like operational areas that way. Crisis suits also fitted into both of those, but they didn't have to because they got jetpacks. Riptide got a jetpack, Fire Warriors and whatnot. They all fit into various dropships, and it's all really tidy, and it was all really well thought out. Like, how are the Tau going to deploy? How are they going to do the logistics? How are they going to get stuff from low orbit to the battle grid, as Winters would call it? And it was all really well done. They had flyers for dealing with super heavies. The Tau don't hold positions, so to speak. Like they either fit into like their Montar or the Q-on, where they lure things into traps and whatnot and fall back and then wreck them. They don't do sieges. They don't hold ground.
Very mobile form of war.
Maneuver a lot. Yeah.
Highly. Yeah, they're fast operating drop assault army, basically.
Heavily redeployable gun platform.
They drop down and say, "We're the Tower. Are you going to join us? Jolly good for the greater good. If not, then
I think the term is gunboat diplomacy. Like, we're offering an open hand here, but the other one is really, really closed, and we can move it really fast towards your face. And so like
basically happy slapping people.
It is. Like, yeah. So the 6th edition codex was fucking great. Like the collector's edition looked amazing. The rules were great. The lore was great.
And that was their first codex for 2 editions, wasn't it? Because they went.
Yeah.
They dedefinitely went 2 editions without a codex. I think
they had a 3rd and a 4th. 5th. They didn't have 5th, and then they had 6th.
Didn't have a 5th. Yeah, that's right.
Because I remember because I took a massive break from the hobby. From playing it, I mean, I still kept up with White Dwarf and that, but I took a massive break. And I think I missed like 3rd and 4th, and I got in like the tail end of 5th with Mike. And I had like a 4th edition Tau Codex, and I'm like, what's the target priority test? I'm like, that's not, it's not in the rules. Like, what does this? Or, this doesn't do anything. This war gear doesn't do anything now. This marker light rule doesn't do anything. So the 6th edition was fucking great. They'd moved the lore on a little bit, but they'd expanded out. Like they'd had like the 3rd sphere expansion at that point, I think it was, which was awesome because all it did was bring them into conflict with more stuff. Nothing got fundamentally changed. It was great. And then 7th edition came out, and it was like, oh, now we've got big walkers stomping around for no more reason than because you want to sell more models for money.
Yeah, so it's like the army lost identity, lost its military philosophy, because we need to sell another big model.
Yeah, they're like, here's a Storm Surge, and I'm like, that looks fucking shit. Like, what have you done? I know what you're trying to do, but you ain't done a very good job, and it's crap. The entire concept of it is shit. It's not something that the Tau would have used, like an artillery suit. Like, how are you even going to deploy the fucking thing? It doesn't fit in anything. Like, you just deploy it in a massive crate with retro thrusters, and then they're like, oh shit, we need to exit really quick. Everyone get to the LZ, and they're just like, wait for me. thud, 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 thud. Oh no, we are destroyed. We couldn't get away. It was bollocks. And like the supremacy suit that Forge World did is a proper 50-50 for me, because I think it looks awesome, but I just don't fit. I'm like, the Tau don't battle Titans by having Titans. They battle Titans by wrecking them with super heavy flyers. Like, you read the Taros campaign.
But the problem there is people don't like super heavy flyers as much as they like giant robots.
Which is, why they put them in to sell more.
It's
integrity lost.
If I had to guess, I would say it's mandates from up on high coming down
Definitely.
the Line Studio.
Almost certainly, because the Tau went from what they were to just becoming a big suit army.
Yeah. And it was just like me.
They were at one point. I don't know. People might not know this. I mean, most of you probably will, because you're going to be grognards like us. But the Tau were a fully auxiliary army. They had Vespid, they had Kroot, they supposedly had all these other alien races that they've incorporated into the Tau Empire that fought with them.
Yeah.
And now most of that was, obviously the Kroot have just come back, but for the longest time, the Tau just turned into a giant mech suit army.
For gameplay reasons, that was pretty good, because it was the Kroot plugged the gap in the Tau army for close range.
Yeah, but I mean, even in 6th, I think they changed that slightly, because they got sniper rounds and special rules for being in forests, and I think in 7th they basically just stopped having any real melee capability and just became shit.
Which, as you say, is what the Kroot are there for, really.
Yeah. Whereas before that, they weren't amazing in melee, but they were, if enough of them got into combat, they were still like a bit of a threat.
I do like the idea that the race has advanced so far technologically that they're crap at fighting.
Yeah.
I do like that, because obviously you've got the Eldar, and the Eldar obviously have the different paths and the different philosophies for different things, so it makes sense that at least some of them would be quite good at fighting. And obviously, because they're a militia where civilians become guardians, it makes sense that they would have some kind of martial training. But I do like the idea that the Tau are one of these races that have they're a bunch of nerds.
Yeah, I think it's
they've basically advanced. They're the Weibo army. They've basically advanced so far technologically and weapon wise that they're a bunch of weaklings.
I think it's a combination of that, the fact that they're not physically built the way a lot of the other races are, and that they find close combat is just distasteful and uncivilized.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, their first move is always diplomacy and negotiation, like Matt says, with a closed fist. But is it the Earth cast?
They're the builders and engineers. The Watercast are the diplomats.
Who's the diplomats? The Watercast. Okay. Yeah, so obviously they go down there and say, look, join us or we'll shoot you a lot. But that's part of the philosophy of the army. It's sort of like, as Karl says, they're not a brutish army.
Nope.
They're a firepower based army, and like Matt said, they're originally a drop assault. Overwhelm your planet really quickly. You join us, otherwise we shoot you a lot. That was an identity which, as you release too many units, you lose that identity.
Yeah, I mean, the Tau are an interesting case for 40k in that they're not a galactic player at all. They're like this tiny little pocket empire that if the Imperium didn't have anything more important to do, they'd be gone.
Yes, exactly.
There's the whole thing.
Well, wasn't it in the Heresy they found them and said they weren't worth doing anything with?
No, it wasn't quite Heresy. I think it was about 2,000 or 3,000 years before the current setting.
Yeah,
and they basically they basically went, these guys are still throwing rocks and spears around. We'll mark them for deletion, and then we'll come back later. And then the whole planet, the whole system got cut off by warp storms, and they couldn't. And then by the time they got rediscovered, they were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get hung up on they sort of misunderstand the scale of 40k. Like the whole idea that the Tau control a small region of space. The Imperium is a million worlds. Like just the Imperium had the Damocles Crusade, I think it was called, where they basically tore through the Tau Empire, absolutely like wrecking it. Then the 13th Black Crusade kicked off, and they were like, "Actually, we've got to go this way," and that was it. Yeah. And that's the only reason the Tau still exist. They're a fantastic army, and they're a really interesting counterpoint to a lot of the other races in the game. But they're not.
I think that's one of the nice things that in a universe that is very archaic and baroque and very technology forgotten, you've got this technological advance, right? And it's not even like the Eldar, who've just been around for so long that they've just kind of gone full circle. The Tau are a young technologically advanced race, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think of a lot of the races in 40k as kind of like almost in context of where the humans are in 40k. So, the humans had their dark age of technology, and hubris led to a fall. Oh, well, that happened on a grand scale with the Eldar as well, and it happened with the Necron. And the Tau are yet they're so young and naive; they're yet to encounter this. So they look down on the Imperium, and and rightfully so, how they do. But it's from a level of naivety where they don't realise that this is eventually going to be their future in this universe, because this is how this universe works.
They're not affected by, although there's some signs that might change. They're not affected by the warp, so they don't have that to deal with either.
Their auxiliaries are, which became a problem with the fourth sphere expansion, because
that was the one, the fourth sphere. Got lost, didn't it?
Yeah, there was some really dodgy lore where they got lost in the warp using their newfangled slipstream drives, which kind of skip into the warp and then back out again really quick. And I kind of got fucking stuck. And all their auxiliaries obviously do register in the warp, and it all kicked off with them becoming demons and getting possessed, and the ships got attacked and everything.
That's right. Yeah, I do remember reading that. Yeah.
You might want to speak to those Savage Guela about those Gellerfields.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. We should borrow a few. And so all the Tau that survived the fourth sphere expansion slaughtered all their auxiliaries when they got out the other side. They murdered them all, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Tau are really nice," and I'm like, "Are you sure you know what you're talking about?"
The people that say the Tau are really nice are the people that haven't read enough about the Tau.
Exactly.
There are no.
They are merciless. They are merciless in their own way.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're basically space communists, and the communists are not necessarily nice
they
people.
They encounter a planet. They're like, "Would you like to join us?" No. Join us? No. We're going to. Don't join us. We're going to take you by force. I mean, they basically do what the Imperium does, just with more steps.
Yeah. They don't. The Imperium doesn't ask first. Well, they only ask once. Are you going to bow to the Emperor? No. Oh, fuck you then.
Yeah, I mean the Horus Heresy. The Great Crusade. You had the compliance of worlds, and that was basically what the Tau do, but with less of a veneer of politeness.
Well, more of a veneer of politeness.
I was going to say more of a veneer of politeness. As you say, it's still quite a small empire, and
it's just a little bit down on.
They're basically a microcosm of the 40k sort of universe, really.
Yes, yeah, and being contained to that area means that lore-wise, you can't really have them interfering with much else. So they're not gonna. It's like the Matt. You probably know this because you've read the Codex. What are the Votan? Where are they? What are they doing?
Near the core, aren't they?
Yeah, Votan are central core where no one else really goes because it's too unstable. Like there's something. It's been a while since I read it, but basically because it's the core of the galaxy. There's too much activity there with stars and stuff going on, and everyone's just like, there's a lot of stuff there for us to get, but there's a lot of stuff there that we don't know about, and stuff gets lost all the time, and we're just not going to bother. Except for the Votan, who just live there, and they're all good. But one of the interesting things was in the Votan Codex, it establishes that the Demiurge are like a strain of kin that have kind of diverged from the rest of the Votan.
Okay.
And as such, in the new Tau Codex, they're not really mentioned as an auxiliary anymore.
That makes sense. I mean, that's a very minor retcon that I think we can let them get away with. That's not a big thing, but that's an interesting.
To be fair, it was never official that Demiurge were squats or kin.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was always suggested, but it was never. I mean, even to the extent that I think they showed up in Battlefleet Gothic.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And never got to see what they looked like or anything like that. Only their ships, which were vaguely dwarved, say.
Stronghold ships, yeah.
Stronghold ships, yeah.
They were basically, the Demiurge were, the funny thing about that is the Demiurge were put into Battlefleet Gothic as, look, we know squats aren't in 40k anymore, but here's a little nod to them.
Yes.
And now they've changed it again so that then it's not a nod to them. They're just a weird, they're like the weird stepchild of the Votan.
Yeah, like the Sasquatch compared to the humans, like a proto offshoot kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been one of these people who's perfectly fine with the squats never coming back. I always
yes, I never needed the Votan. I know Matt quite likes them.
I don't hate.
I think the army massively lacks identity, to be honest.
I don't hate them by any stretch. I just don't, you know. I could take or leave them. They've arrived in an edition of 40k where I'm so completely out of it. Like, it doesn't matter how good the models are. I'm just not going to do it.
I don't think they add anything. That's the problem. There's no niche in 40k that they fill that wasn't already being filled.
Well, I just feel like the development time for those could have been spent on something more useful. Mind you, I feel that way about most of the Primaris.
I was going to say, I feel like most of what they've released recently, if I'm being completely honest with you.
I think they did a good job with Necrons, overall. We got a Void Dragon when we could have had a new Nightbringer. I mean...
Yeah, I think that's one of the... I think with the Necrons fell into that trap again, especially when Indomitus came out. It was like, we need a load of brand new units. All right, we're going to redo Necron Warriors, because they desperately needed it. But there's a load of other stuff that desperately needed to be redone. And instead, they just threw a load more units into it. And again, it just loses that identity.
Yeah, a lot of them are worthless. We could have done with.
Well, the Reanimator, me and Matt were saying, was just like, it's never been worth taking.
No, it looks
did we get new destroyers at all? Like actual floating destroyers?
No, we got big heavy destroyers.
Got heavy destroyers.
Yeah,
so you got heavy Lockhurst destroyers, but they never replaced
that heavy destroyer. Looks like a seaside cartoon of a car. Like it's just got like really over-exaggerated rounded edges and doesn't really look anything like.
It's got a big caboose on it. It's got a fat ass.
I just don't get it. Like it looks so weird in comparison to the rest of the Necron stuff.
The old destroyers are the last unit that still has those green rods.
Green rods, yeah.
So I'm very surprised they didn't get redone.
Well, like we got all these new units for them, but what, any mention on pariahs at all?
Pariahs disappeared. They never came back. They're kind of a stupid unit anyway. To be honest, they look stupid as well. Like actual weird androids, weird robots rather than androids.
They could have done something interesting with that, though. I think
the Necrons are in a good place, but again, I just think that it was like the plasma sites and all the different bloody Cryptech units like Plasmancer and Chronomancer.
That ridiculous one with a skull, like it's projecting some sort of skull thing. I just looked at that. I was like,
yeah, we don't need all this. This is just ridiculous. You've just made shit up for the sake of it, and all it does is erode away at the integrity of the army, the army's identity.
Yeah,
it looks nice though.
It's weird because
they
seem to be pushing 40k into this weird like tournament sort of thing. That seems to be their main focus, is making it
massively
easy to play and for tournaments. But then on top of that, they've then added 500 million units to every army, and then reduced down what you can actually take for those units. And I really don't understand like where they're going with this or what they're trying to do with it.
They just want it to be massively easy to get into, buy a shitload of stuff, put it on the table, blow units off the table, and get as close to 100 points as you can. I don't even think that there's any narrative to the games anymore.
It seems to be the two types of people they want are the people that take armies to tournaments and will buy whatever is min-maxed at that time. And they also want the 13-year-olds who they can offload their parents' wallets from. Like, they're not interested in anyone else at all.
They're not interested in anybody who wants to do narrative campaigns or anything like that. They've thrown Crusade at people and gone, there's your narrative stuff. But the narrative side of the game, which would involve things like pointed war gear and all that kind of stuff. So I said to Matt, and you might have seen the video, Karl, but when I put together the army list for the Tyranids, it was the most depressing thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
because there's no variability, and this is the most adaptable army in 40k, infinitely adaptable and variable. And it was literally like 10 termagants, 70 points. 10 termagants, 70 points.
Andy Chambers come back.
Yeah, Cletus said I would have tied him to a chair and not let him leave.
Oh, what with all the bio-adaptions and all that from the what was that, 3rd edition?
Yeah, exactly. It's all gone. No, there was biomorphs and everything. It's all gone.
3rd and 4th.
You know, the High Fleet adaptations was later. But there's no variation in the army at all. You used to be able to put, if you wanted a higher strength, I think it was toxin sacks. If you wanted extra toughness, it was armored chitin or extended carapace maybe. And there's none of it now. It's all gone. It's as boring as fuck.
Yeah, I mean, for people sort of, I don't want to just say our age more, but maybe our level of investment in it. 40k is not for us anymore. It hasn't been for a long
time. I genuinely do get that feeling. Yeah, that I've aged out of 40k.
Well, it's not even aged out. It's more that Games Workshop simply do not care whether you play it or not. They're not interested because if you like this sort of stuff, go to specialist games.
Yes, I think, as you say, we're not their target audience.
No, I'm quite into my Horus Heresy, so that's great for me. But what about the people who have the big Necron army or the big Tau army, the Tyranid army? You shit out luck. Your options are to find the very few people that will be willing to play an older edition of the game with you, or sell your shit and get on with your life. And it's not as easy as that when you're invested in it and you really enjoy it. It's a bit of an unfair ask.
Yeah, it's up. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of resorted to doing like 30k rules for my Tyranids, but then I'm lucky that like our Team Handsome group is pretty lenient in what we do. So if I wanted to field Tyranids, and I'll go, look, dudes, I've got these rules, have a look, and they'll be like, yeah, fine, go ahead. Whereas not everyone's that lucky.
As you say, I think that if you're not a complete noob or you have no interest in tournaments, maybe 40k isn't for you because they've stripped out all the flavour out of it. Stripped out all the flavour, no war gear, no nothing, I
genuinely feel sorry for, say like your 12, 13-year-old that walks into Games Workshop now and this is what they walk into. This is their version of 40k. Because everything has been simplified to the point. I mean, when I got into 40k, we're talking sort of Rogue Trader 2nd edition. It was not a simple game. Not at all.
I used to sell it that it made your kids better at maths.
Yeah,
but you still
it's not a simple game. I mean, I'm not a genius by any stretch, but I became invested in it. I picked it up. I learned it. I wanted to know more. I didn't need it simplified for me. I needed to get better and learn it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff that requires effort gives you the greatest reward.
So yeah, if you make this very pick up and play, it will hold the kids' attention for like 10 minutes, and then they're going to be off to something else. And Games Workshop don't care because they've got the kids' money, and there's always another kid.
Yes. And this is, as I say, very much where they're looking now, I think, where they're looking at basically, we're going to do everything we can to make this Amazon show work because we know that by getting this Amazon show out there and doing what they potentially should have done with Warhammer Plus, which is approaching a streaming service to show their material rather than trying to launch their own streaming service, which is an abject failure, it will increase the exposure and get more people into it. And they won't care if those people stay in the hobby as long as they buy shit to start off with.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've diverged quite a lot off. I think Primaris are basically a symptom of the problem that is 40k at this point. Like, it's a pale imitation of itself at this point. And we're lucky. We are very lucky. We still have specialist games.
Yes, very, very, very lucky. I think without specialist games, I would have completely given up on GW by now. In all honesty.
Yeah, I've always said like specialist games kept us in the hobby. Basically, that's why it's so frustrating when GW proper fucks up releases on behalf of specialist games.
Legions Imperialis.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I was huge on Adeptus Titanicus. I still am. I bought every book.
It's great.
Really big on that.
Same.
Really big on Aeronautica Imperialis. I really enjoyed that. It was a fun game. It wasn't complex, but it was a fun game. And
I think it was daunting for people because they're like, this is a list of maneuvers, and you're like, oh shit! Like,
the thing about the maneuvers is the way the maneuvers were laid out was really, really bad because it had that template of the maneuver. But what they should have actually done is just said, look, your plane can make this amount of turns and this amount of moves.
Yeah, I mean, once
it would have made things so much easier.
I get from an entry point that's a nightmare. But once you get to grips, you play your first game of it, and like it all slots into place.
I played Aeronautica. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I felt it was unbalanced, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I bought the Necron ships and then felt terrible for ever putting them down again. Same with Battlefleet Gothic.
Yeah, the Necrons were so overpowered in Battlefleet Gothic. It was almost an instant win.
These are my faster than light drives. Watch me win at everything. Like you put your Necron ships down in Battlefleet Gothic, and like your opponent just looks at you like, you piece of shit. Like,
it's a bit like when I put my Necron army down in front of you guys, Matt, after like the 25th win in a row.
The 7th edition Reclamation League.
I don't want to talk about it.
The Tesla special. Right, so what we'll do is we'll move on to the last part of Primaris that we've not discussed that much, and the way that the Primaris have ruined the Astartes, as we firmly believe they have. And that is, we've touched on it a little bit, but we'll cover it a bit more, the lore behind Primaris. Now, Karl, I believe you've got some notes here, mate.
Karl, how long have you got?
Right, so I could rant forever about how little there is on the lore for the Primaris.
There is actually, that's a good point. There is, because as I said, I went on the wiki and I did some research. There is a surprisingly superficial amount of detail on the Primaris.
Like some new tyranny units that came
There's
out.
not a lot on them at all. No, I mean, we're talking like the Norn Emissary. All right, it's got nothing written about it in the Codex, but it came out this edition. Primaris have now been around for
nearly 10
years. 2016,
2017.
2017. So yeah, like 7 years. I would thoroughly expect there to be a deep and involved lore for them, but where they just keep out bringing new bollocks out, they don't really develop any of the other stuff. So I think, like Karl says, it's very superficial. But the lore for the Primaris is absolute guffing Deus Ex Mechanicum bollocks.
So, as I understand it, they have 3 gene seed implants that make them different to the
on top. Yeah.
One of which is not gene seed.
There's one in the brain. There's some sinew, like metal sinew muscles.
Yeah, which is
like coils.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, coils. Yeah,
definitionally not gene seed.
Yeah, definitely not.
That's an
augmentation. The last one that I can't remember. The brain's the one that makes them grow really fast.
The Belisarian furnace thing, which is when they take an injury. They I don't know, they get like a second wind or something that isn't represented in the game whatsoever.
And then die. Wasn't that the second wound initially that they got?
Yeah, then they gave back to the others,
which they then gave to everybody.
So yeah, it's to me again about what the Primaris are. They're tall Space Marines that.
They're bigger, faster, stronger, but we're not going to show it in any way.
So towards the end of the heresy, Robert Guilliman talks to Belisarius Cawl and says, "Look, we need a new type of Space Marine that we're never going to mention again until I magically come back from the dead. And then if I hadn't, then these guys would have been in stasis vaults forever." Now
you've done a suit of armor for me in case I do come back.
God, that's lucky, isn't it?
He didn't plan on dying. I mean, well, he didn't die. He didn't plan on getting Fulgrimed.
No, but the point is that had he not have come back, then Belisarius Cawl would never have released these things. They would have been sat in vaults forever, and we have had several like catastrophic Imperium-ending events. These things could have been useful for, but were never
very useful.
Like the War of the Beast, 1,000 years after the heresy, would have been really, really handy when Terra was under threat from all that. So we've had that. We've had several Black Crusades, 13 in fact.
I was going to say, I think of the wars for Armageddon that could have been fixed if you just dropped down 1,000 Primaris Marines.
Yeah, I mean, they're so horribly introduced. It's like it's not even a joke how much of a retcon they are.
Again, they've always been there. It's not a case of Belisarius Cawl looked at the way of what was happening to the Mechanicum at the moment, the Imperium at the moment, saw how desperate things were getting, and through some miracle, through some arcane tech, maybe through some STC that was discovered or something like that, managed to work out how to improve on the Emperor's work. No, it's these things have been here for 10,000 years. Apparently, they've always been here, and technically, we would have a reason for having Primaris Space Marines 10,000 years ago, if we needed to.
I mean,
like maybe they were doing covert training operations or something like that. It's just so lazy.
We've had 10,000 years of various foundings of Space Marine chapters. So we had like the Cursed Founding, the Dark Founding, where all these things are going wrong. The Cursed Founding is where they tried to tamper with the gene seed to try and improve the Space Marines, and it catastrophically went wrong for a lot of chapters.
Isn't that where like the Marines?
You can just imagine Belisarius Cawl just sitting there. Yeah, exactly. Low.
Well, I could fix this, but I won't because Guilliman hasn't said so yet because he's dead. Or he's in stasis. Like this is lore that's been rushed through and not thought out at all.
I'll tell you one of my favourite ones I saw, and when I was just reading last night, it said that during the 10,000 years that the Primaris were sleeping or whatever in their vaults, each of them was trained in one form of combat. So when they woke up, some of them were naturally like designed for aggressor armies, and some of them were naturally designed, just emphasising on the single roles that they have. I was thinking, is 10,000 years not long enough to just train them in everything? With the Primaris Marines, not just wake up and go, I know Kung Fu. I mean?
Well, I know one punch of Kung Fu, yeah. But then you've got these Space Marines that have adaptable armor, adaptable war gear. That's the whole point of these new Primaris Marines, that they're only trained in one thing. So, like the Infernus Marines, I can access all this equipment, but I'm not trained to use the plasma gun. I'm going to roll ones constantly.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm not trained to sit in your Rhino?
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, Chapter Master. I'm only designed for close assaults.
Oh, that proper makes me laugh. That when the Primaris Marines came out, the Rhino, they can't fit in a Rhino. They're too big.
They can't fit in a
especially
but they can
a
fit
Land
in.
Raider.
They can fit in our Thunderhawk because it's a 400-pound model.
Yeah, exactly. That was so transparently lazy, wasn't it? It's just like, yeah, you can only go in our new transports. Fucking keyword.
And they didn't have those transports for years either.
No, exactly.
Imagine that. You've got
a Primaris. Here's your Primaris army. You can't transport them in
you got
any
nice shiny
way.
Mark 10. Stride up to the idling Land Raider. Brother, let me in. We must get to our destination. Sorry, mate. You can't fit in that Mark 10 plate. Sorry, you have to wait for your own fancy floaty tank, which is over in the garage. Brother, please let us in. This is urgent. Sorry, mate. I can't let you in. 5 Terminators walk up, just towering over him. Excuse me, brother. Oh, but of course. And you get like fucking what? You can fit Terminators in there, but you can't fit in power armored
Something
Marines
I did like was when they were introducing the. Just for context, I used to collect Flesh Terrors. I used to have quite a lot of them. I had 200 of them, and I was really into them as a chapter. When the Primaris Marines got released, there was a short story in White Dwarf about how Gabriel Seth, the chapter master of the Flesh Terrors, he meets the Primaris Marines, and he basically says, no, you are not coming here. And he beats the ever-loving shit out of one of them. Keeps punching him. The guy refuses to fight back, and he keeps hitting him. And he says, if we adopt you guys, we are basically Ultramarines in all but name. And I don't know if Games Workshop meant it or not, but it was almost echoing the sentiments of a huge amount of the player base.
It's a Freudian slip by the writers. Yeah. I think this is another thing that I said to Matt a while ago, actually, was especially with the new codexes. I'm not one of these people that takes units or will buy a unit because of how good it is in game.
No.
The main factors behind me wanting something is A, how it looks. If I don't like the model, I just won't want it. But also some cool lore. That all seems to have gone as well now. When you see the description for a model, it's just sales talk.
Yeah, so
there's no cool lore about where it's been or what it's done or what events it's done or how it's works in the lore. It's just this can do this in the game. Please buy it.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the Primaris stuff is completely homogenizing the Space Marines and like removing a lot of the individual flair. So, like, if you collect Space Wolves, what's your Blood Claw or your Grey Hunter? Like, what's happened to those?
So I say all they got was that Hounds of Morkai box, which is Reavers and an upgrade sprue.
So you've got Reavers with funny heads. You've got Intercessors. You've got all the because Space Marines Space Wolves never had a tactical squad or anything like that. So why have they suddenly? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you get out of a Space Marine army? Well, a Space Wolf army now. They're grey Space Marines with a wolfy guy with ice shoes on, like leading them. That's it.
Yeah, it's the identity. Obviously they'll get revisited in time, I imagine.
I imagine eventually they'll get Wolfguard Terminators. That seems like the most logical next thing for them to get.
I would say yes. I'd say that's because obviously the Dark Angel's got their Deathwing, so you would think that you'll get Wolfguard.
You've kind of done yourself over though, because if you say you collect Space Wolves, right? You've gone to Primaris, you've bought the Intercessors, and in a few years' time, they're going to be like, well, here's your Grey Hunters and your Blood Claws. Right, cool. What do I do with these Intercessors?
Yeah. The thing is,
like, nothing is future-proof. There's no investment in it now because if you have any long-term goals with this, it's irrelevant because they're going to get replaced in a few years.
Well, this is it exactly. I mean, not only are they just continually adding new units, but as we've discussed, they're also stripping out the old units that aren't even that old. So they've put an expiry date on your army, essentially.
Well, as we've seen with Games Workshop at the moment with their social media, they don't like you asking lore questions. They just delete your comments and ban you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think I saw they did a post on the Skaven, and there was a guy saying, "Oh, are there female Skaven now?" And they just deleted it. And I'm like,
I didn't really think that was offensive. That's a fairly legitimate question.
There's nothing wrong with it, I put on there, how come you failed to mention the most downtrodden of all Skaven? have died hundreds of times, at least in my games, the Skaven slaves. Because as we know, GW just will not refer to Skaven slaves now. The whole idea of slavery is a no-no. No, they've got slaves to darkness, which apparently is still a thing because you're just a slave to darkness. You're not actually a slave. But the whole idea of actual slaves is just gone. I mean, guarantee you'll never see it again.
No, just by collecting an army or playing a game or playing a fantasy, no one's suggesting you do this stuff in real life. I don't like play Grand Theft Auto and then come home and think, right, I'm going to get in my Jeep and mount the curb. Like,
yes, it's again exactly what me and Matt said. You know, playing the game is not, you're not endorsing. Just because I play a game where I wipe out aliens, I'm not endorsing, you know, that kind of
what a weird
fascist kind
mounting
of.
a curb is better than
what strange mentalities have in a war game. Can you imagine the people that play Bolt Action being horrified at playing a particular faction?
You say that, there was a video that Midwinter Minis did where he said exactly this thing, and he basically said that people who play Nazis are bad people. I was just like, dude,
I mean,
that's a fucking bad take. You know what I mean?
Kind of a silly angle.
Like, well, no, the thing is, even just from a militaristic point of view, the Germans had a very specific method of warfare. Their tanks were better than the Allied tanks. Their army operations were completely different. There's loads of reasons to play as the Nazis in World War II.
Well, the thing is, like,
it does not mean that you're a fucking Nazi.
It's also it's so stupid. Like, part of the fantasy is it's fun to play as the villains sometimes. That doesn't mean you ideologically agree with them. Like, I play Night Lords in Horus Heresy. These guys skin civilian populations. They beat people to death. They torture. It's all about like psychological warfare.
Mm.
I can barely be bothered to talk to people when I leave the house. Like,
you'd be like the laziest Night Lord ever.
Yeah, it's just
fine. I suppose I'll cut
to play the bad guy. Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, no,
like,
I'm not totally
separate the real world from fantasy, for Christ's sake.
And a lot of people can't do that these days, unfortunately, which shows in social media massively that people are having that cognitive disconnect. Yeah, like I like playing Tyranids because I like the fucking idea of an endlessly adaptable swarm of locusts that basically just, it's almost like the Borg. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, now I'm going to go and eat my cat.
Everything in front of it, and yeah, that's it exactly. I've played that, and now I'm going to go and eat my cat. Yeah, so I mean, it's just, you know, and that's I think that's another thing with. I don't want to get too much into the kind of whole SJW thing because obviously you start getting quite a bad label on you, and I don't necessarily think the representation is a bad thing if it's done properly. But that whole cognitive disconnect is where some people play these games for escapism.
Well, that's exactly it. It's not meant to be a literal translation of who you are as a person. It's a bit of fun. Like, it's not real. You don't espouse the views of the Imperium when you walk down the street. I mean,
speak for yourself, Karl. I've got a loudspeaker. Death to the heretic. But no, I mean, seriously though. I mean, we play these games for escapism. And if you see yourself represented in 40k, there's probably something wrong.
I don't see myself represented in any model I've ever painted for 40k. I don't need it to. I
genuinely do not see myself. No, I don't need to, and I don't see myself represented, and that's fine. And it's like when you get people like me, probably out of all the Starship captains, I identify most with Cisco.
Yeah, he's
going back to Star Trek. He's probably the captain that I identify with, just because he's got the shortest temper. And he just doesn't take any bullshit. And he kind of
if it was Janeway, I'd be asking you some questions like that now.
Well, it depends on what episode of Voyager you're going with. Sometimes she's a really smart, scientific character, and other times she's a genocidal maniac.
And sometimes she's a salamander.
No, that never happens. We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about Threshold.
Threshold is the worst.
But no, seriously.
It's
so fucking bad. They break warp 10, and he takes abducts her, and they go and have salamander babies on a planet. Oh, mate, just don't talk about it.
Still, I would rather watch that than Discovery.
Fuck yes, on repeat, mate. On repeat, I really would, because although it's not good, it's still got the ethos of Star Trek in places.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek rant is for another time.
There's some moral dilemmas going on.
It's okay to sex your captain as long as you get changed into a weird little alien lizard first.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was changing her into a lizard as well because she went through warp 10. Anyway, as I said, not about Star Trek. But no, seriously, there's escapism, and I think that's fine. And I think that just because you don't want politics in Warhammer 40,000, that does not make you a bad person.
You can have politics.
Exactly. There's enough of that bullshit everywhere I go on social media, absolutely everywhere. It does not need to be in this. And I'm not saying representation, I'm saying politics. So you can just fuck off with all that bollocks. We don't want it. But yeah, when it comes to the lore, I think we can agree again that it's lazy. It's full of holes. It's like when you watch a movie and it's quite obvious that something in the script is only happening because something else happens later and it has to make that happen. That's what 40k. That's what 40k feels to me at the moment.
Well, I mean, for me, that it's go back to 2017. 8th edition is kind of like Warhammer 40,000 was a really, really good movie. Like, it's that kind of movie you'll remember, like your Predator, your Aliens, your Terminator. It's that movie that's just fantastic. Like, you really love it. Then 8th edition drops, and it's kind of like that shitty sequel that's done by another director. None of the original cast are in it, and it's what? Hang on. Actually, I just thought of the best analogy for it. The Warhammer 40,000 is the original trilogy of Star Wars. It's really good. You've had a great time with it. It's got its flaws, but it's fun. And then
lots of good memories.
8th edition onwards, J.J. Abrams has walked on the scene, and it's explosions and no depth.
Yep, absolutely.
That is what 40K
very,
feels like now.
Very superficial, very flashy. Here's the Primaris, they're the bestest ever. Oh, look at them, they're amazing. Oh, Indomitus Crusade. Oh, none of it means anything.
Yeah, it's the sequel trilogy of wargaming. Unfortunately, that's what it's become.
I don't know what you're talking about. What sequel trilogy?
Yeah, and that means if Warhammer 40,000 is Star Wars, then unfortunately that means Age of Sigmar is Indiana Jones, and the whatever the latest one was called.
Oh, the Dial of Destiny.
Goonies.
God, that was awful.
Dialysis Machine of Doom. Yeah, it's a cheap imitation of what it was.
On the bright side, I think Heresy is probably Rogue One. So
yeah, it's this weird anomaly that we're all kind of preciously holding on to, and that makes Legions Imperialis is Andor. It's for some reason some really weird anomaly again that it's just out of left field.
Andor was genuinely very good. Andor felt like Star Wars for grown-ups. And I don't mean like it's full of swearing or blood or violence or anything like that. I just mean it tackled grown-up themes.
Well, much like I was saying about 40k earlier, the difference between Horus Heresy and 40k, it takes itself seriously. And that's what specialist games do. They take themselves seriously. I mean, you obviously got your comic games like Blood Bowl and whatever else, but
but they're very much
the games
isolated.
Maybe seriously isn't right. I mean, the games have some self-respect. That's more.
I think 40k feels like a cartoon.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah,
40k feels like a cartoon. Horus Heresy doesn't.
40k feels like the new Transformers trailer for Transformers 1.
Oh god,
fucking awful. Awful. Like, the only way I'll go and see it is if my 9-year-old goes, "Father, I wish to see this. You used to like it," and I'll be like, "I never fucking like that," but I'll take you to see it.
That's what I can understand. I said when I saw that trailer, I was like, "This just looks awful. It just looks like it's made for tiny little kiddies." And somebody goes, "Yeah, but Transformers is designed for little kiddies." I was like, "Yeah, but Transformers is also a 40-year-old franchise.
Yeah,
it's got a lot of mature fans.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been too hard to do something that crosses that bridge."
Yeah, and I think some of this is by design as well. So the more popular 40k gets, the more they're going to try and flatten it out and make it as accessible for Billy Everyman.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which means it becomes more simple, it becomes more basic, it becomes more accommodating.
I think it's going to become,
and it's death by 1,000 cuts. So
at the moment you've got a certain moral ambiguity around, or no, not even at the moment. In the old days, you definitely had a moral ambiguity around Warhammer 40,000. Nowadays, I think the Space Marines are very much being set up as heroes.
Yeah, I mean, as far as sanitizing 40k down to make it palatable for people, I mean, good luck with Slanesh, I guess.
I tell you what, GW wish they had never invented Slanesh, and that's why it went away. Slanesh went away for the first edition.
It's no longer the god of pleasure; it's the god of excess now.
God of excess, yeah. Well, they got rid of that. Yeah, they had to get rid of that. They didn't know what to do with Slanesh, so I think it disappeared for a whole edition of Age of Sigmar, maybe 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a weird one because they come out with that. There was a model I really liked for the Slanesh range. It's the demon who's playing a human being like a harp.
That's the mate.
Infernal Enchantress.
That's the one. She's on my shelf.
Yeah, such a good, really grim, dark, horrible model, and then it's it's kind of interesting because it's kind of out of nowhere. Like when you look at what they're doing with the rest of 40k.
Well, I don't know how much stock. I mean, because one of the things that you found in Rapturous or whatever her name is, when they released her, she kind of disappeared straight away. So it's like, we need to release her, and then we're not going to talk about her and mention her or anything like that. She kind of doesn't exist. What I heard, and I don't know how truthful this is, was that there was a whole load of other models at the same time that were quite Cenobite-ish. So each of them was quite Hellraiser, Torture-esque.
Right.
And GW just basically turned around and said, no, it's not happening. Can't do it. It's and that's why I just think everything's going to be very homogenized, sanitized, safe. You know?
Yeah,
I'm not saying like models need to have tits or anything. That there'll be no edge on anything now. It is all going forward just going to be cartoonish, young adult.
Yeah, I mean,
40K.
I've always been the kind of guy who likes. I like the most serious elements of like the Warhammer universes. I don't really like your also random nurglings and snotlings jumping around having a good old time. Like it's not for me. I like the elements of where it's dark and horrible and very gritty. That's what makes it compelling to me. And one of my recent trips to Warhammer World, I walked into the main building, and instead of being greeted by like the chaos, yeah. So you've got the Chaos Warrior and the really gritty stuff like the model of Lurtz from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Instead of all that, I'm greeted by a 6-foot plushy, happy-looking Nurgling and candles. And I'm just like, what has happened to this?
Well, this happened as soon as they started doing, those stupid friendly cartoons.
And you go upstairs and you could buy children's books on Warhammer 40,000. I'm like, it's just.
See, I'm okay with that because I've got a child, and I'm like, you want to get into my hobby?
See, when I was a child, I had the actual 40k books. I was perfectly happy reading those. I mean, these children's books, how do they go? Is it like little Billy gets forced into a soul engine? Like, do they talk about it?
In all honesty, I have read one of them, and it's not massively unrecognizable from 40k, if you know what I mean. It's still definitely set in the same universe. And identifiably so.
Just the luckiest kids in the universe who never come across anything.
Just the luckiest kids in the universe, basically. Yeah. Who, nothing bad's going to happen. It's all very sort of diverse, but there is some element of something there. It's not completely vapid.
I'm fine with them like making more diverse characters. That's all great. Like, that doesn't make any difference to me. But it's just the idea of like little Jenny walks out of Hadblock 5C and sees a drop pod covered in lightning. She's about to have a really bad day. Like,
yeah,
they're not going to cover that, are they? It's going to be like little Timmy encounters the friendly Necron.
When I was talking about when I talked about GW in the past, I always said the worst thing to happen to GW would be if action figures came out for it and a motion picture came out for it, because that would basically turn it into a fad.
Do not put the spotlight on it because they'll kill it.
Yeah, do not put the spotlight in it, because everybody will get into it. It will be a fad, and then it will just die out. And back then, I gave a shit.
Yeah.
Now, it's inevitable, and I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
because it is inevitable. GW are only going to go one way of this. They're going to make it watered down and super accessible.
People will hear this and think, oh, it's gatekeeping it because you don't want other people in your hobby. No, you're wrong. You want all kinds of people in your hobby. That's fine. What you don't want is those people demanding changes and fucking it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, 100%, Karl. I couldn't agree with more. I don't think gatekeeping works because the only people who can actually gatekeep are Games Workshop.
I think it's a case of, this is your hobby. If you're coming into it, like, do not be arrogant enough to try and change the hobby to your needs. I understand that this is the hobby. This is what you are entering. It shouldn't have to accommodate for you.
To the hobby, you're attracted to what it is, not what you want it to be.
I mean, there's loads of stuff in Games Workshop I can't stand, but I don't think anyone else should have. I don't think I'm in the business of telling other people they're wrong for liking things.
Well, I don't get into hip hop and try and make it more like metal.
You should though.
Well, Limp Bizkit gave that a good old go.
I was going to say you've already got Limp Bizkit and Cypress Hill if you want that, but you know what I mean. I don't understand why you would get into something and then want it fundamentally changed to the point that it's
the kind of people that want to do that, and not the kind of people that actually like the hobby in the first place. It's just another platform to espouse whatever view.
It's just a vehicle for.
And there's been a lot of people that were saying, there was somebody saying like, what was it? I hope this happens to all entertainment things. Right-wing people have no place in anything. Now, for one thing, if you're that far left, anything to right of where you are is right. So even if it's a perfectly reasoned person sitting in the centre, like I like to think we are, you're right wing and they don't want you. But more than that, when she was then challenged on it, or not challenged, but like sort of questioned, said, "No, I don't even play. I have no interest. I just don't want those people in it."
Just stupidity
like,
given
well,
form, right?
Just like, well, what the fuck's it's got to do with you then?
Yeah, the whole left and right thing. Like, keep all that shit out of my game. I just want to enjoy a war game.
Yep.
I'm not interested in
Escapism. Yeah, I want to roll dice, blow shit up, and have fun times and stories with my friends. That's it. That is the extent of my interest in Warhammer 40,000. I love the lore and everything, but I don't give a fuck about the politics. I really don't. I really don't fucking care.
I don't care what colour the tie of the arsehole you're voting for is wearing. It's just not important.
Oh, and it should have no bearing on the game at all.
No, I mean,
no bearing on the game at all.
In the context of like having your hobbies, it's irrelevant. I don't give a shit. Like if you have a real problem, then like, find a way to deal with it outside of the hobby, like left or right wing. Just get on with your fucking life.
Absolutely. I feel like the left wing and the right wing are basically throwing shit at each other.
And
sitting in the middle.
And everything's getting caught in the middle. And it's so boring now.
It's horrible. And, you know, we could say that 40k is the latest victim of this. Did you have anything else in your notes, Karl, that we've not covered?
Let's have a look.
As we chip on towards midnight and Matt's blinks are probably getting longer and longer.
No, so I've just got Hell Blasters sound stupid, aggressors look awful, grav tanks ... How many to a chapter? They lack history, poor model release schedule. Just because, you know, how long was it until they had any kind of jump pack Marines that weren't carrying bolt guns?
Yep. We still haven't got assault terminators.
Yeah. No, they're still selling the old ones. I noted.
Yeah. So are we waiting for Blood Angels for that or what?
So they're the inconsistent scale terminators that they're selling at the same time. Cannot do historical games, i.e. Badab or the Scouring, negating 10,000 years worth of history. They could have done a straight up upscaling like they did with Chaos.
Yes, which should have been exactly what they did. There was just think about how much development time and all that kind of shit that was put into Primaris, and I would say at least half of the fandom hates them. What we're saying right now is not a particularly outlandish perspective.
No, I mean, my biggest thing was Games Workshop lying about them being supplemental and not they're saying they're supplemental, they're not a replacement.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it did take a while, but we all knew it was coming.
I've got in all caps, Space Marines should have bell-bottom trousers.
Yes, always. Yes, the Phobos. Seriously, when I put that picture up, you'll laugh. It literally looks like he's wearing shorts and Crocs. And it's like, fuck. Never be able to look at those again.
Yeah, so my biggest lore concerns really are like how little was done to actually implement them into the setting. It was so rushed in just to get them in and getting them in that release box set and go from 0 to 100 with them. And
have them in the right place at the right time.
Very little was done to address the fact that people might not be cool with you messing with their armies.
And it's just like, how do you have Primaris veterans when they've been asleep for 1,000 years?
Yeah, you don't. At all, unless what is it now? Just every time it's convenient, one of them crosses the Rubicon Primaris.
Yeah, that nothing like I said that they basically said originally. Oh, it's really dangerous. Nobody can do this. Oh, it's just a miracle he survives. And then it's just like, yeah, nope, everyone can do it. Lol.
Was it really dangerous because they needed time to sort their release schedule out?
It was just a case of, I mean, because the amount of Primaris characters that have been released in 8th edition was very low. I think it was like minus. It's basically Ultramarines from what I remember.
Marnius Calgar did not Corax.
Shrike.
Shrike.
Emo Boy Shrike.
Went from a great model to whatever that is now.
He went.
Fucking awful. Yeah, that's
he went straight
awful.
In the bin.
And not just the hair, not just the hair and the face, but even the way the fists are done and everything. Just horrible.
So yeah, with
Tigurus was done at the same time, I think.
The Imperial Fist chap that they brought out, that Tor with the
Torgadon,
silly
and
power
also Berios, the Iron Hand.
Can't help but think if you were going to do that, you had an opportunity to bring in Lysander, like their actual character, or that was your perfect opportunity to say he didn't make it. Like the route crossing the Rubicon is really dangerous. He didn't make it.
And let's face it, nobody would miss Lysander.
Well, I'm sure the Imperial Fist players would, but in the grand scheme of things, not really.
No, what I'm saying is, like, he was an old, dodgy Terminator model. They haven't done Terminators. It was the perfect time to say, right, he died. Here's a new character in Gravis armor or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we do have this kind of silly, like, how many, like, bloody Minus Colgar crosses the Rubicon and fucking nearly dies, comes back, goes to fight at Vigilus, gets his bloody heart ripped out by Abaddon, but he's still alive. It's all getting a little bit silly, and as you say, there's no sense of peril or danger or anything. It's just
to be fair, he did have
the other thing with the I've gone blank now. The Minus Calgar. The other thing with him was he gets released with two super Primaris guys. No, how have they risen up the ranks so quickly? Did they cross the Rubicon? What?
Yeah. There's no.
I think in the setting, apparently by the time the 8th edition box came out, Primaris Marines were supposed to have been active.
Cool, that puts them on par with the average tactical Marine, I think.
Yes, I was going to say that's barely a stud and a half.
That's exactly the kind of people you want in looking after the chapter master. Maybe if they'd have done a better job, he wouldn't have got his heart ripped out. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think. I mean, and I would imagine that at this point in the lore, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine they're not even bothering to make normal Space Marines anymore.
So, how much time has passed between 8th edition and 10th? Because obviously time has passed, because Guilliman is dealing with different things now.
You've had the Indomitus Crusade. It's probably about 150 to 200 years, I would say, in total.
Long enough
say 200 years.
So long enough for Castellan Creed's daughter to have died and had several generations more.
Yeah.
Are we going to address that, or are we just going to sweep that under the rug?
She can afford the rejuve treatments, though. It's okay.
There's limits to rejuve treatments, though, with even in the setting for how long they can actually be used for.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, this is one of the problems with Nobody Dies, isn't it? And
maybe she come across one of those Primaris guys with the time warp.
The Judicia. In 40k, in the old 40k, what we would refer to as proper 40k, it never mattered so much because it was a point in time.
Yeah.
Whereas
and I love
now it's very. They've made it quite aware that 200 years has passed, but nobody's died, nothing's changed. What's going on with the Rift? Anything? Do we know it?
It's not important to the lore right now. Don't worry about it. Don't ask questions.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all, they've blown this universe up in this great big, but it doesn't seem to make any difference.
It's kind of like that famous red letter media thing, isn't it? Don't ask questions, just consume product and get excited for next product.
Get excited for next product. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, the good thing about it was it wasn't just a point in time with 40k. It was you could go back and play any point within 10,000 years. I mean, the Badab War series of books came out, the Imperial Armor ones, and they were set like 100 years before where we were at that. Where the current end of the timeline was.
How much are they missed now? Really, I mean, we've got nothing.
I treasure my Badab War books.
Nothing to match that at all in any way.
Well, the only thing is the Badab War was basically their warm up to the Horus Heresy, because they set the tone and standard for how those books would be.
Yeah, because that was Alan Bly as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
yes, it was. Actually, talk about Alan Bly. Somebody said when they were doing their female Custodes arguments that Alan Bly put references to female Custodes in his books. It was like, you take his name out of your fucking mouth.
I'd like to see where
he did not.
Get Will Smith on the hook.
Strangely enough, they couldn't show any evidence.
I mean, the female Custodes thing. I mean, as an isolated incident, I don't think it's a big deal, but it's just another change to the law. It's another thing And the more you do this,
it's an escalation, isn't it? It's an escalation, and we know where it goes from here.
Every time you change things, it saps the investment of people because you're taking away an established rule of the world.
And the integrity, like I said, of GW, it's just like, well, what else will they change?
Well, every time you adapt something, you change, you remove another layer of integrity from people's, belief in your world. And how many times do you do that until there's nothing left?
I mean, I have no faith in GW. I think they will change anything now. Absolutely anything in order to sell what they need to do.
My advice to anyone listening would be get yourself on eBay, get the edition of the game you really like, and the books, as many books as you can get cheaply, get them and hold them. Because, Games Workshop is going to, I personally feel Games Workshop's going to mess this up in the long run. Get what you can now so you can play it with your friends in years to come, because I don't see anything good coming.
No, I don't see any way that I become more invested in 40k going forward. I just see it becoming more watered down or beginner friendly. And as I say, maybe I am just maybe we're all just old grumpy bastards, and it just isn't for us anymore.
I don't see how they fix it. I don't see it. They could take it in a more serious direction again, but that doesn't change what they've done. It doesn't change what law they've established.
I don't think they will. I think if anything, they're just going to make it easier and easier and easier. It's already Crayon Hammer.
Well, I think it's in cycles because third edition was arguably a lot of people really disliked it because it took the game from a fairly complicated skirmish into a
but that is the biggest change that it's had. I think still.
Yeah, and then fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh all built on third edition. They were all built on that fundamental principle. And
it was iterations of a rule set, not a completely new rule set.
Yeah, 8th was a rewrite to simplify it again. 9th overcomplicated it to the extreme.
Yep.
10th was another attempt to simplify it down to the point where it's, I would rather play Snakes and Ladders.
Yeah. 10th. There's nothing in 10th at all for me. Nothing at all. I don't. I look at 10th and I'm just like.
The thing though, I'm not. If you're the kind of guy who you got a full-time job, you've got kids, you've got the whole works, and you're not really that hugely invested in the world. You just want a game you can have a beer with your mates and play a few games of. 10th is probably your bag, and that's fine for you. But for people that are into are long established and really into their war games and like the complexity of it, 10th is a disaster.
Yep.
So on the plus side, we've got Heresy, I suppose.
Yeah, and Heresy's not the be-all and end-all. And the other thing is really important to note is Games Workshop are not the only war games company. There are other companies that do some fantastic games out there. And if it all does go wrong, all hope is not lost. There are other games.
Well, Karl, it was nice to have you on.
No, you're right. And I did think about doing another video saying basically where now, because there's a lot of people who've decided they're going to boycott Games Workshop, apparently, whether or not they are or not.
I'm not sure it's going to have much of an effect.
Or long term. It'll have no effect. GW, as I said, I don't care how many fans do it, and I don't care how much they refuse to buy. Amazon, Vanguard, and BlackRock have got more money than you.
Oh yeah, you drop in the ocean.
Therefore, have more influence over GW than you. It's as simple as that.
We are all a drop in the ocean to these people.
So yeah, I admire the fan protest, and I love the fact that they're passionate about it. But I don't hold any faith. I've seen it with Star Wars. I've seen it with Star Trek. It makes no difference. And GW have already rapidly moved on to dismissing the fans. We'll see how far that proceeds. But yeah, they're already blocking people. So that's the next step on the path to wherever they're going. And like I said to Matt, GW are basically the hobby version of Disney with everything that comes with it.
Yeah, they might as well have the next range of Primaris Marines in Mickey Mouse ears.
Yeah, might as well. Because
at this point, the Imperial Eagle is their version of the Mickey Mouse ears.
Yeah, more or less. And I'm almost surprised they haven't got rid of the Imperial Eagle as well, actually, because they've obviously faced some backlash from that in the past. Because obviously, it looks quite sort of Nazi Imperial Eagle-esque and the Reich thing. Yeah, as I said to Matt a while ago, I think GW's lost its soul. I think the people that were the soul of GW have probably mostly left or been relegated to non-influential positions or specialist games. And I think we potentially could be looking at the end of the IP as we know it. Too much doom and gloom on it.
It won't go away, but it's going to become unrecognisable. So that's what I said. Get your old copy, find the edition of the game you love the most, get as much of it as you can, hold it and enjoy it with your friends.
So which one would you pick then, Karl? Which edition?
Personally, I would probably go with. I've played them all, but 7th edition is probably my favourite, with some heavy caveats on formations. Other than that,
yeah, no. I would say basically no formations, basically. But yeah, 7th. I think 7th.
In fairness, the people I played 7th with didn't really go mad with formations because it was about having fun, not about trying to ruin out someone else's game.
But that was the problem with formations. As I say, it just turned into take this and pretty much win. And then they happened to leave boxes that match those formations. Funny that. And even put the special rules in the formation box rules in the box. My favourite edition is 2nd. But I do identify the fact that that is so far removed from the current 40k experience that I think I would probably join you with 7th.
Well, it's almost
formations.
2nd is almost a separate game. It's almost like a skirmish game, isn't it? It's not really.
Yes, yeah. It's just completely
20 models to massive army.
Yeah, you try and play 2nd edition with the amount of models you use these days, you will be there for several days.
2 tactical squads and a captain is an army in 2nd edition.
Yeah, and like a dreadnought or something, and that was it. Yeah, you literally got 2 squads.
Yeah, if you want to show off, bring a dreadnought.
That was your 1,500 points. And my 2nd edition army had 3 dreadnoughts in it, actually. I was hated even back then. What about you, Matt? What's your choice,
I'm telling you, 3 dreadnoughts, man. What's next? 12 wraiths.
It's 3 dreadnoughts, so it's 3 dreadnoughts or 12 wraiths. Your choice.
You horrible bastard. 7th, easily.
Right,
6th, okay, I've always said 6th and 7th was peak 40k for me.
I better not discuss how many dreadnoughts I've got.
Karl
right before
some.
right before the reset, then basically is what we're saying here. Is peak 40k right before the reset of 8th.
I mean, like from 3rd onwards, they'd kind of slowly simplified the game because they wanted you to buy more models, and the more models you have on the table, the longer the game takes. So you need to streamline the rules more.
I think that's the difference, though. Is they just wanted you to use more models. At that point, I don't feel like they were making it really, really simple and stupid, so you didn't have to think about getting into it and playing it. It was just a case of we just want you to use more models, which is fair enough. And none of those changes really, I mean, whether or not you agree with them or not, none of those changes seemed super drastic because, as Karl said, it was iterations on a rule set. And then by the time you got to 7th, it was just kind of the best. So they tried bits and taken what worked.
2 things that really bother me about 8th onwards is the lack of templates. It sounds silly, but it meant a lot of tactical placing of your models.
Yeah.
And the changes to vehicles. I don't care how you justify it. Your tank shouldn't get sleepy when it gets shot.
Yep. We discussed this as well, absolutely, and that was that was done to make it in line with Age of Sigmar.
Just as an optional extra, universal special rules. They existed for a reason. They're good.
Yeah,
leave them alone. We should
have had Karl on our Fixing 40k version video. He said pretty much all the same stuff we've said. Universal special rules. There was nothing wrong with them. You knew exactly what a model did and the unit did by its universal special rule.
Deep strike, rending. You know what these things are. Eternal
warrior. Yeah. Fleet of foot.
Deny the witch.
You knew what they all were.
Oh, never mind. I could be on this all night.
No, we will wrap it up here. I think we have, and sound off below, guys. I think we have, if not eloquently, then we have effusively stated why we don't like Primaris.
We've had a nice meandering ramble.
It's been fun. It's been a bit of a rant, hasn't it? In places.
Cathartic.
It's been pretty good. And we've had some positive as well. Go by 7th. It's probably quite cheap now. That was the rule set that came in 3 different boxes, wasn't it? 3 different books.
You didn't have to cart a massive fucking tome around.
So you didn't have to carry, so you had 3 separate books.
Do yourself a favour, play Heresy. It's a fun game.
Actually, I'll tell you what, with 7th, you could even just buy the mini rule books because they were fantastic. I've got about 4 of them myself. They did different ones with different boxes. But as Karl says, play Heresy. If you don't mind not using all the Xeno armies, then just play Heresy. It's a much better setting. It's a much better game. And it feels like it has people who care about it in charge. I'm not going to
say shame we lost
that,
Alan Bligh.
Dude, such a massive loss, Alan. I mean, that was, though what we have with Heresy right now is good, that was in many ways the soul of the Horus Heresy, especially that Horus Heresy.
Alan Bligh set the standard for what a good rule book was. I mean, the book one Betrayal of is the gold standard of all the Imperial Armor books were, but particularly that and the Bad Ab War. It's just, they're so well written. They take themselves so seriously. They flesh out so much of the background.
Again, you read current codexes and stuff that come out, and it just seems like kiddie hour compared to that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it was a pleasure to have met the guy once. It's a shame he was taken from us.
As I say, a great loss. I'm not sure if I met him or not. I think I might have at one of the games days or something, on an event I went to. I went to a couple of Horus Heresy events and stuff as well. But yeah, absolutely. And I'm not convinced that it ever really recovered. I mean, obviously, say what we've got the Heresy now is great, but I don't think it matches up in the same way to those books. Those books are just absolutely phenomenal pieces of work. Yes, we'll call it here. Thanks very much for joining us, Karl.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
We covered it all quite nicely. So, sound off down below, guys. Let us know what you think, and we will catch you next time.
See you later, guys. Thanks a lot.